Welcome one, welcome all. If it is Sunday or, Saturday or any day after a WWE PLE or AEW pay-per-view, it is Wrestling Night in America. I am your host, Brandon LeClair, back for the second night in a row, and we are here, of course, to talk about WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 2. There's another WrestleMania officially in the books now, and there is a whole lot to talk about. We have already got plenty of comments in the chat and some VIP members lined up here to join us live on the show as well. Want to remind everybody that if you are a VIP member, the link to join us here live on the show is available in my report on pwtorch.com and usually on Wade's report as well. You do have to be on the VIP side of the website to get the link to call into the show, but the YouTube link to watch us live and stream the show is available on the regular side of the PW Torch site as well. As always, I am joined by a co-host for this Wrestling Night in America, and we actually have a special guest that I'll bring on here in just a second. But first, I want to bring on a first-time contributor to Wrestling Night in America. I teased this last night, said that we would be bringing Chris Adams on the show. So please welcome PW Torch contributor Chris Adams to Wrestling Night in America. Chris, it is great to have you here.
Hey Brandon, thanks for having me. And if anyone's watching, I hope you aren't disappointed that I'm not a resurrected British wrestling legend. I'm just a regular dude. But I'm glad to be here.
I am happy to have you, and I told a fib. It wasn't a purposeful fib, but I said last night on our post show for WrestleMania Night 1 that Greg Parks would not be joining us for WrestleMania Night 2. Guess what? I lied. At least a little bit. Greg is not here for the entirety of tonight's show, but he is going to round out this first segment with us. So, Greg, welcome back.
Happy to be here, Brandon, even if it made a liar out of you.
Yeah, Greg and I are feuding after last night. We both threw each other under the bus. The reason for both is because of Karrion Kross, but different reasons. And Karrion Kross made an appearance tonight, so yeah. Greg will have an opportunity to talk about that if he so wishes as we get going. Chat is filling up here, guys. Let's get right into things. We're gonna kick things off with, of course, the main event because it's fresh on all of our minds, and it is what the majority of the chat here is talking about. So we'll go ahead and start there. Greg, I want to throw to you. Talk about the main event, which of course saw John Cena defeating Cody Rhodes to win his 17th World Championship. He does so as a heel, despite, don't want to bury the lead here, a very, very strong babyface reaction for John Cena throughout, and a very strong heel reaction for Cody Rhodes that was covered up significantly by commentary. Greg, go ahead.
I'll address the crowd reaction first. I think WWE has trained their fans, and we've seen this for the last couple of years now, has trained their fans to want to see moments. And John Cena winning the title, his 17th, breaking this mythical record that WWE has set up, would be one of those moments. A title change of any kind is a moment. That's why you see heels, when they win titles, get cheered at that moment, because the fans just saw a title change, and that's a big deal. And WWE is, just like WrestleMania is all about moments. Rarely do they talk about the wins and losses. It's about, I want at my WrestleMania moment. That's what some wrestler argues to Nick Aldis backstage, right, to get on the show. So not only are the wrestlers expressing that, but the fans are buying into that. And so the fans want to see moments. And John Cena winning here would be that moment. John Cena's final WrestleMania is the last time that a lot of these fans who are in Vegas are going to see John Cena live. So they're going to cheer him against Cody Rhodes. That makes sense. What I don't think this means is that going forward, John Cena is going to be the babyface and Cody Rhodes is going to be heel. I don't think every city, and maybe tomorrow night on Raw, because it's a strange crowd the night after WrestleMania. But I don't think we should read into this that, oh boy, WWE's got a problem on their hands. Cody Rhodes is going to be booed now. John Cena's going to be cheered. I don't think it's to that extent. I think it was just the confluence of events tonight in Vegas led to John Cena getting cheered over Cody Rhodes. So that's my crowd piece of it. The match, there's going to be a lot of complaints about the match. It was not a WrestleMania main event. It was not a pay-per-view main event worthy match from a work rate standpoint. The other way to look at it, it doesn't really need to be. The match was about doing the simple moves and getting a reaction out of it. I mean, that's really what it was about. It was about involving the crowd. Now, the crowd didn't play along the way WWE wanted, so that was problematic, and that, I think, it made it come across as worse than it even was. But, with John Cena, and he was never the most athletically gifted wrestler in WWE. Father Time and just being out of the ring for as long as he has is going to work against him in this run. So he's very limited in what he can do. Cody Rhodes, athletic, but not in the 2025 athletic sense. He's not Konosuke Takeshita athletic. He's not Will Ospreay athletic. So there were some limitations there as well. So this seemed to me, my read on it was, let's do the little things and work the crowd reaction. That's going to be the main part of this match. It's not going to be the big moves. It's not going to be the athleticism. It's going to be, people are going to remember this for the crowd reaction. It's almost like Rock Hogan at WrestleMania in Toronto, right? Where the match stunk. I mean, quite frankly, but it was remembered and revered because of the crowd reaction. And then there's the last part, which is the involvement of Travis Scott and what did and did not take place leading up to the finish or thereafter. I think if you look at the excitement that came at the end of Elimination Chamber, when John Cena had turned heel, and that's what everybody was talking about, and it set the possibilities in motion of what could happen leading up to WrestleMania. And then to get the WrestleMania main event with John Cena in it, and we're at a point where the only interference was Travis Scott, of all people. I think people are going to look back at Elimination Chamber and look at where we are now and say, this is a major disappointment given the promise of the turn at Elimination Chamber compared to where we are now with this story. And a lot of it has to do with The Rock's absence, which I'm sure is The Rock's choice. Whatever's going on there, we can only speculate right now. Maybe one day it'll be revealed. But that was a huge disappointment here. So I think those were the three parts to it. To me, was the crowd, the match itself, and then the interference / post-match, whatever you want to call that piece of it.
Yeah, I want to kind of take this piece by piece and first start with your comments about the crowd, Greg. I'm certainly not convinced that you're wrong, but I do have more concern, I think, than you do. I think that we've seen in the past that major crowds at major events have gone a long way in influencing the WWE audience writ large. We've seen it happen with WrestleMania before, where you have a large number of fans coming in from all over the world and congregating, and there's sort of a hive mind collective that takes center stage over the course of the weekend throughout all the events. And then those chants and those trends tend to permeate the product as the months go on. We've seen that happen a lot in the past. And to me, the biggest story coming out of this show is how strongly this crowd rejected Cody Rhodes. And that is worrisome to me for the future of what they're trying to do here, storytelling wise, with both Rhodes and Cena. Now, does Rhodes get universally cheered again when he's against someone other than John? Or is this the beginning of the tide starting to turn on him, which a lot of people predicted would happen? I mean, I don't think anybody thought that the unanimous love that Cody has received for the past several years in WWE was going to last forever. I think that there was always a shelf life on it. I didn't think that it would come this quickly, and perhaps it won't. I mean, there is a very good opportunity. There's a very good chance that basically the scenario that you've laid out, that things go back to status quo after tomorrow night's Raw, is the reality that we're in. But if it's not, and this is where they turn the tide, I wonder what route they take with that. Is it going to be the complete and total commitment to, bury our head in the sand and push through at all costs, the way that they did with Roman Reigns, 6, 7, 8 years ago? Or is there going to be more of a willingness to change? And with the kind of comments that we heard from Paul Levesque this week on the PR circuit, it seems to me like the very first time he has been levied criticism for his creative direction, he has sort of dipped his hand right into the Vince McMahon playbook of blame absolutely everybody else but me and the booking team. It's everybody's fault but mine. So that does give me some pause, but I don't think that we have an answer to any of this, and we won't until we get a few more weeks down the road.
I will say this, and I want to hear Chris's thoughts on this too. But two quick things. First is, we're in an era where the fans, by and large, have accepted what WWE is pushing out. Mm-hmm. There is not that push against the booking in ways that there have been in the past. Triple H, I think people acknowledge that he's a clean slate from Vince McMahon, and they're willing to give him time, and they're not going to go into arenas looking to reject his booking the way they did Vince McMahon. Right. So being a different era, that's where I'm not really sure that the fans are going to have the appetite to continue this rejection beyond tonight. And also, John Cena has been, I think, pretty effective as a heel. Cody Rhodes certainly has been effective as a babyface. I think before tonight, you would probably say the top babyface in terms of getting babyface reactions week after week on TV. So he knows how to cut a babyface promo. There's no waffling here. There's no wiggle room. I think it could easily be brought back to where they need it by these guys going out and cutting promos, because they've been really good at it. And John Cena has been unquestionably a heel during this run. And, if he's cutting the kind of heel promos that he's been cutting, I have a hard time seeing the crowd cheering every word of it. And the same thing with Cody Rhodes. I mean, if Cody's cutting the babyface promos that he's been cutting, it's hard for me to see the fans rejecting him, knowing how fervently pro Rhodes they have been to this point.
Yeah, Chris, I want to throw to you here in a second. Sure. And I hope that's the case, because I think that I would view this main event a lot differently if the crowd had reacted the way I expected them to. I mean, I would still agree that the match wasn't particularly strong, but it had a lot going for it storytelling wise that I thought was hampered by the way the crowd was reacting and the way in which commentary very clearly had to try to cover for them, instead of just acknowledging that, hey, this is a crowd of people from all over the world. A lot of them probably grew up with John Cena. He's their guy, even though he's not wrestling for them. I think that there could have been a little bit more honesty on commentary, because some of the stuff that Cole was saying was putting me right back into that Roman Reigns spot from 6, 7, 8 years ago, where they're just saying things that are blatantly untrue for the sake of trying to, court you away from paying attention to what's happening in real time. Chris, go ahead. Anything that you want to talk about with this match, and especially the crowd reaction?
I mean, you served up a lot, right? If I could back up a little bit, there's something that happened during this week leading up to WrestleMania that I think ought to color how we perceive, especially tonight. There was an intense media blitz of trying to control the narrative around around the product, right? About who their audience is, how they create their stories, how they respond, how they don't. There was Nick Khan's whole big thing about we're the underdog, right? So there was all of this messaging coming out that I think ended up, as you see on commentary, perpetuating this culture of they really don't think their fans are as smart as we are, right? And so I think there is this miscommunication, misperception between fan base and the booking team, like you've talked about. I'm not too worried about Cody Rhodes being booed. What I do think was fascinating was how quickly the audience did start to turn. And I couldn't tell if that was, well, are these people 7 drinks in, right? And they're looking for that moment, or are they really here because they say, no, we want this to be our guy? I kind of find myself with Greg thinking it's not too much of a problem, but hey, what do I know? I hope I'm not surprised to find out that I'm wrong. The match itself was not great. And that I think is a charitable way that I would describe it. What I texted my friend, I can't say on air here. It never picked up into third gear, right? If in terms of storytelling, it ended on a very flat second act, right? Having a mid-match entrance that's dedicated TV time to it, I think also ends up exploding the illusion of this being combat at all. Because what does it mean about your backstage environment that somebody can interfere in your biggest money-making match of the night and you train cameras on them? Like, that doesn't make much sense from an internal perspective. So I find lots of problems with what we got tonight, and lots of good. I want to say that as well.
Yeah, I think that there's so much to unpack with the main event here, and we'll of course continue to do that as we go through and run down the card chronologically. Greg, I know that you are joining us for a limited amount of time, so I want to throw over to you to kind of give your overall thoughts before you have to sign off, and then I know we've got a lot of VIP callers on the line as well that we'll bring in and to chat with Chris and I after you finish up. So, Greg, take it away. Run down anything else you want to talk about from the main event, but then, of course, anything that you want to throw out there from the show at large.
Yeah, I think that about covers it for the main event. To me, this show tonight was in many ways the inverse of last night's show. Mm-hmm. Where last night had what I thought was a pretty weak undercard by WrestleMania standards, capped off by a strong main event. I thought tonight the main event was weak and the undercard was largely pretty strong. I think you started the show off with the triple threat for the women's world title. That was probably the match of the night. And then you had Drew and Damian Priest, which, you know, street fight rules. They used the garbage cans. They used the tables. They didn't go overboard with it, which I'm a little surprised because it was the only hardcore match of the 2 nights. So I thought there was opportunity there for them to go a little further with the hardcore action, and they didn't. Dominic Mysterio winning the Intercontinental Championship is interesting to me. At first I was kind of like, he won. And then I'm like, well, okay, clearly they're going for a continuation of this Judgment Day story and who the leader is and that internal struggle between him and Finn Balor. And this is just going to exacerbate it. Randy Orton beat Joe Hendry by pinfall. So I know, Brandon, we talked yesterday on the show about some of the possibilities that could be facing Randy Orton. We saw some possibilities in the chat. Joe Hendry was not one of them. If you had asked me to list 10 wrestlers, I think Joe Hendry probably would have been on there, but it would not have been maybe the first 5, let's just say. So this is one of those things where, yes, TNA benefits absolutely having their world champion on WrestleMania, but he also loses in a non-competitive match and then gets RKO'd and mocked after the match. So I've seen some people say, hey, maybe the RKO is the Randy Orton version of a handshake. Like, that's not something to be embarrassed by or anything like that. It's almost like giving a guy a thumbs up. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But yeah, I think there were some problems there. I didn't love that, the way it, especially after Joe Hendry being in the Royal Rumble. You know, his Rumble stint was very short, very he is all about the entrance. And I think WWE and maybe TNA think as long as he gets the entrance in, and he did get a very good pop tonight, as long as he gets the entrance in, that's what matters, because that's what fans care about. Anything else that happens after that, we don't care, maybe. Logan Paul, AJ Styles had a good match. Karrion Kross getting involved. They keep trying to make this guy a thing, and
I wasn't going to let you leave without talking about Karrion Kross.
I mean, he got punched in the face, so I guess there's your positive. But like,
happy.
I mean, there just isn't really a lot to get behind with him. Becky Lynch did end up being the surprise tag team partner of Lyra Valkyria tonight. Which that was kind of what we expected, I think. I threw out the possibility that it could be an NXT debut, but I was reminded of the history between Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria during commentary, so that really made a lot of sense. Having them win was a cool moment. And then the main event. So I thought the undercard was a little stronger than the night before. The main event was significantly weaker. So however you want to balance that, whatever you put your priorities on is probably how you're going to shake out a final score for these two nights. That's kind of the way I saw it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe one of the first times that we've had these two nights, the two-night WrestleMania, where I think there was probably a really compelling argument for just doing one night and cutting out a good number of undercard matches and fluff. And I know that they can't do that for the reason that Greg kind of making the money motion there with his hand for those of us who are listening on audio, for those listening on audio. It's not something that we're likely to see anytime soon, if ever again. But creatively, in terms of, just a fan presentation, for fan enjoyment, I think that this would be a far stronger show if it had been a one-night card and you take away a lot of the filler that we saw on last night's show. And of course, for the reason that Greg already mentioned, they can't do that because so much of this, I mean, probably 30-ish% is advertisements and brand sponsorships, different types of deals. So this is the modern presentation of WrestleMania, for better or for worse. Greg, anything else you want to throw out there before we let you go and get to bed?
No, I wish you the best of luck, gentlemen. Take care.
Hey, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, appreciate you jumping on. Greg, you wanna plug your stuff real quick before you head out?
Yeah, so I'll have a new column in the Torch newsletter this week. I'll be writing that up tomorrow, recording an all-new Greg Parks Out Loud for VIP members of pwtorch.com. This is one of those columns, and for those who've read me for years know that I write about the WrestleMania fashion in the week after WrestleMania, what the wrestlers wore, what looked good, what didn't. And I found that now that they split up WrestleMania into two nights, it's a lot harder for me to get all of the stuff in the column that people were wearing and everything I want to mention. So what ends up happening is I do have to select to talk about only certain wrestlers in the column. So Greg Parks Out Loud, that's going to be my opportunity to go beyond that and to make sure I include everybody and talk about that. So going to be some real original content this time. Greg Parks Out Loud, I have a feeling. So make sure to listen for that. And I'll have a Parks' Take again this week on pwtorch.com. That is for both the free and VIP side. And I'll be joining Brandon. I have no idea when the next pay-per-view is. So I have no idea if I'm available for it or not. But I'm sure sooner rather than later we'll be getting together on one of these again, Brandon.
Yes, Greg will certainly be back on Wrestling Night in America, a regular co-host for sure. Greg, thanks again so much for joining me last night and for kicking off the show with us tonight. And talk to you soon.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.
All right, that is the one and only Greg Parks, who was kind enough to join us here for the opening segment on Wrestling Night in America, talking about WrestleMania Night 2. Chris, we've got a few people here in the VIP boxes down below waiting to join us. I want to get to them in a second. Before we do that, gonna run through just a few comments here about the main event that I had starred for us to react to. Vivek in the chat saying that was the worst WrestleMania main event since Yoko, Hart, and Hogan at WrestleMania 9. Which is an interesting comparison, considering that also took place in Vegas. He said, I have no problem with Cena winning, but the story was terrible. Travis Scott as the distraction. Yeah, we've covered a lot of that, but Chris, what do you make of that comment in general, and does it stack up as the worst main event since WrestleMania
9? All right, so is it possible that this was worse than The Miz versus Cena? I mean, I don't think that's possible.
No.
But I also want to say the stakes are much higher for this match than a match like that. And so even though in a vacuum, the two may be incomparable, this one had so much going into it that for them to not reward our expectations, and not even our expectations, what they promised us. And that's the difference, right? Like, there's this really awesome book about the history of WWE. We Promised You a Main Event. Have you read that book?
I haven't, but I've heard of it.
It's awesome. They promised us a main event and did not deliver this year. That's the feeling, right? And so I don't want to say it's the worst one since our Yoko Hogan. That one certainly makes less sense than this one. So no, I got to disagree with my friend down there. Politely disagree. Although still, it's pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, help me understand something. A man comes in, interferes, yanks the referee out. How does not force some kind of stoppage there? Like,
that is the classic WWE style main event. I mean, we see them do it on occasion. We've seen AEW do it a lot recently. That has been a chief complaint of mine with AEW pay-per-views, is that they feel like a mid-2000s style WWE main event. And tonight, WWE pulled one out of their old playbook and did the same thing.
And weirdly inconsistently, because there have been matches recently where someone has been yanked out and they immediately call for the bell, right?
All about convenience.
Yeah, convenience and sloppiness, right? I don't have to agree with the outcome of a main event, but if it feels sloppy, then you've lost me already.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true. Sadler in the chat, following up to your comment, Chris, just saying this was way worse than Miz Cena. It made everyone part of the match look like idiots, including the referee. I mean, I'm certainly in agreement with the latter part. I mean, to your point that you just made, Chris, that the referee looked dumb for losing control of the match and not taking any action on it. But I think where my disagreement comes, and I think this kind of reiterates what you already mentioned, is just the stakes here were so much higher that to me it elevates this match, even if it wasn't good, beyond what we saw from Cena and Miz, because that match was so clearly one note as a vehicle to set up The Rock versus John Cena. It served no other purpose. It wasn't a match that people were invested in. It just was there solely to set up The Rock and John Cena. It was a precursor advertisement to WrestleMania 28. And to me, that sort of by default situates it below tonight's main event.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just, and don't get me wrong, like tonight's was there's something to be said for being disappointed with a match that you expected more of. And I get the argument that people expected nothing out of Cena and The Miz. They got nothing. So it was sort of what they thought. But still, I think that there's more intrigue. There's more story to tell. Everything surrounding tonight's situation, to me, is more important and more poignant than what we saw in that match. A couple of other ones here. Sadler as well, just saying that complete opposite of yesterday. Undercard was great, and that awful main event almost ruined the show. Were you in a similar boat, Chris? You feel like, kind of like Greg brought up when he was with us, it was kind of the inverse of last night. Last night was all main event. Tonight, the opposite. And this is a good opportunity too for you to give just some quick thoughts on night one, if you want.
Yeah, night one, I had a very similar reaction. As it started, I thought to myself, okay, there's no way they're going to capture WrestleMania 40, but this still doesn't feel quite what it should. Um, the undercard matches and the undercard, like in particular, the War Raiders branded outfits were so
Mm-hmm.
offensive to me, right? And that felt to me indicative of the undercard of yesterday's show. Fairly cheap in
Yeah.
terms of how much dedication they put into it and all sorts of stuff. And then as it crept closer to getting that main event, which moved with fluidity and precision and grace and antagonism, right? Nothing felt wasted in that triple threat. And so, yeah, then when today starts with that amazing triple threat, I thought, oh my God, are we just going to keep getting higher and higher, right? And then you slowly start to feel, no. Um, yeah, I'm there's a lot to process, man. Like I'm
Yeah,
processing it on the fly, like
it's tough to
conflicted,
do in real
very
time. Yeah, yeah.
conflicted about this one. Yeah,
I think you kind of put the visual image in my head. Like this show really is like a bookend curve. I mean,
yeah,
you start on the low end, it builds, it crescendos with the two triple threat matches, the end of last night's show, the beginning of tonight's show, and then we sort of come back down the curve until we settle at the bottom with that main event. So yeah, I mean, visually, I think that is the representation of this WrestleMania as a whole. uh, I'm noticing, a trend in the chats here, like a lot of people feeling like they're kind of overwhelmed with a lot of negative comments. I think largely because of the main event, but I think that that'll taper off here as we work through the show
yeah,
chronologically, because so much of this tonight I thought was really good and,
yeah.
and a pretty strong improvement over what they did last night. So looking forward to getting into that. One more to highlight here from Steven. Again, just reiterating a lot of the same that we've talked about with the main event. He just said turning Cena heel, knowing that was the outcome, was a terrible move. Should be a moment to be celebrated. We get heel Cena in a bad match caused by interference by a C-list celebrity, which there is something to be said there from the level of involvement from Travis Scott. And you
Yeah.
kind of alluded to that already, Chris, but talk a little bit more about, the Travis Scott sort of serving as a stand-in for The Rock tonight.
Yeah, he very much felt like a proxy, right? I mean, we've still never heard this guy speak in any
Mhm.
meaningful way about his involvement in this match. We don't know his motivations other than being there, right? We've gotten some of it and maybe some of the behind the scenes stuff, but we don't know why he was involved in this, trinity of evil from Elimination Chamber, right? Um, so for him to be the one, I thought, okay, he's coming out, which means there's going to be even more shenanigans, right? Um,
Mhm.
there reaches a point where a match can be overbooked and it has to be overbooked just a tad more to make it all worthwhile, right? I mean, that was like the main event in WrestleMania 40 night two. And so it felt like we were going there, like, okay, cool. They've started it. We know what we're going to get, but it'll probably be a spectacle. And then it just landed with this wet thud, right? Travis Scott, no Rock.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, that piece feels like it's forced brand synergy to me, which was indicative of this whole show more than any of the other manias I've seen recently. This one felt like it was um, much more integrated with their branding, which can work well, like Drew McIntyre's Doom gear, but then it
Yeah.
works really poorly, like the War Raiders, right? I think Travis Scott probably falls into something there, that it was a brand thing, but it was just done in the most egregious way, in a way that served no purpose. And in fact, to I guess Sadler's point, right? Maybe to Stevens, it made everybody look like fools. It made everybody in Gorilla look bad. It made everybody in the ring look bad. So that was to me the most boneheaded piece of it all.
Yeah, Junaid in the chat raising the point too that I do want to point out.
Right. Yeah.
As Stephen had mentioned, Travis Scott being a C-list celebrity, which it it's all subjective in terms of what type of media you consume. Travis Scott is a massive touring artist, one of the biggest names that WWE has had involved in their product in quite a while. But I would be remiss if I didn't note the fact that he's also quite controversial. I mean, this is someone who had a very highly publicized, newsworthy performance at the Astro World Festival a few years ago that resulted in a large number of injuries. And Travis Scott failed to really take much accountability for that. And so he is not without some baggage. And WWE has opted to, co-opt him, and that's not surprising given who they're associated with and the things that they opt to promote at times. So it's certainly not surprising. But Travis Scott is going to be a polarizing figure, and not unlike Logan Paul being a polarizing figure. And I think that they really like that, for better or for worse. All right, let's go ahead and start bringing in some of our VIP callers here. Before we kind of run down the card chronologically, I want to bring in CJ first because I think I know what he wants to talk about. CJ, welcome to the WrestleMania 41 Night 2 post show. What do you got for us? You with me, CJ? All right, we're going to come back to CJ. We'll check in with him in a little bit. I'm going to go to Jason D now. Jason, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, Brandon. Also, Chris, thanks for putting me through.
Hey, man? Yeah, good to talk to you, Jason. How's it going? What'd you think of the show?
I loved the show until Travis Scott made his entrance, and I have to say, I enjoyed the main event because I enjoyed seeing John Cena as a heel. I enjoyed his facial expressions. I enjoyed him stomping on Cody Rhodes because we haven't seen John Cena in a heel in such a long time. And I had no problem with the slow, methodical pace of the match. What's interesting for me, because I always look at what is the story they're trying to tell here? And this is where I feel like there's a disconnect because, so last year's WrestleMania, the story coming out of it is that good things can happen to good people, right? Cody Rhodes in the main event, overcome all the odds, he finished his story. Good things happen to good people. This year, the story seems to be that you have to be a bad person in order to get things done. And that's Cody's weakness. And that was sold by Michael Cole. You had Wade Barrett as the heel lead commentator saying he's disgusted with Cena, but Michael Cole's saying, no, Cena is now the GOAT. He's a 17-time champion, and Ric Flair didn't get to 16 championships by not being the dirtiest player in the game. It was Cole justifying Cena's actions. And the message we're getting is that, and I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt if they're telling a more longer-term story, is this the start of Cody, quote-unquote, turning to the dark side, realizing that he has to resort to these cheap tactics in order to maintain the championship? Because this is where I feel the disconnect is that Cena got rewarded by doing the wrong thing, and Michael Cole is promoting it, saying he understands it. And I mean, look, the other thing is when Travis Scott comes out, we had John Cena hold Cody for Travis Scott to hit Cody Rhodes. Now, if Travis Scott was to hit Cody, Cena would have been disqualified. But Cena's lucky that Cody sort of fought back out. So that whole thing didn't make any sense. So the whole thing is a bit of a disconnect for me, right? The last part of the match. I'm just intrigued. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt to see how this longer-term story is being told and what they're doing with Cody. And I agree with you, Brandon, and also Greg, about Cody getting booed. I think people are cheering moments, as it's been pointed out, and John Cena being a heel is a massive moment. So people are cheering it because they're getting something that they always wanted to see some 15 years ago. And seeing Cena as a heel, I'm saying to myself, could you imagine this type of John Cena up against CM Punk in 2011, or turning heel after he lost to The Rock? It would have been so great, but we didn't get it. We're getting it now, and people are cheering for that. They're cheering for something they always wanted to see. But now that the toothpaste is out of the tube in relation to booing Cody Rhodes, because Cody Rhodes had done a great job as a babyface up until now. He didn't get booed against Kevin Owens. He was very, very strong. But now people have been given permission to boo him because they're seeing something from Cena they always wanted to see. Could this be the start of something down the line? And if it is, if you're WWE's booking and you're Paul Levesque, surely you have to know that there was always a risk of this happening. So I'm intrigued to see what the greatest story they're telling out of this, considering how everything played out.
Jason, I'm curious your thought here, because you're kind of laying out a really compelling argument for them stretching this out over a period of some months. But we have an expiration date for John Cena, right? So what do you expect in terms of timeline for Cena to remain a heel? Because it's been my belief that by the time we get to Cena's farewell in Boston in December, he will be firmly reestablished as a babyface, because it seems like there's no other way for him to go out. So what do you think? What do you think of that? First of all, do you think I'm onto something there, or do you think that they can actually stretch this out for the remainder of his time with the company? And regardless of where you land on that, where do you think they can go with this heel Cena? How long are the legs, essentially?
Well, I agree with you. Eventually, John Cena has to turn babyface. But a compelling story they could tell is that as Cena eventually leaves as a babyface and sees the era of these ways, he ends up creating a monster in Cody Rhodes. So everything he put in Cody Rhodes' mind, it comes to fruition, and Cody finally sees things Cena's way, but Cena eventually turns babyface. So Cena creates a monster in Cody Rhodes, and Cody goes on to be this monster heel, and Cena's only got himself to blame. So that might be a story that they're telling here. Now, mate, I find that actually quite intriguing, and it's very in-depth and layered.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm giving them too much credit for this, but every time there's like an ending to a match or whatever they're doing, I always remind myself it's 52 weeks a year. Mm-hmm. It never ends. You have to have something on the go, and you always have to have something coming up, because the question that everyone asks of a booking team or creative is, and then what? And then what? You just can't end on something. There has to be, and then what? Because it never ends. So I would imagine, like you said, John Cena is going to bow out as a babyface. We all know that. But could it be Cody eventually turning on Cena and doing a classic double turn? And the story is Cena has no one else but to blame for himself for creating this monster and planting it in Cody's head that he has to turn to the dark side, so to speak, in order to maintain his position on top. I'm just trying to lay it out and make sense of it, because I would like to think they have a far longer term story at hand.
Yeah, I think there's definitely logic to that idea. Chris, what do you make of that? And kind of same question for you. Do you think that Cena has to go out as a babyface, and can they do that by executing sort of a double turn here in the coming months?
All right, so I would love a sort of boldness and brashness to having him go out as an abjectly hated heel. I think that would actually make for a fascinating wrestler's journey. But no, I agree with you, Brandon. By the time he ends, he will be redeemed. And I think Cody's going to be the one to help his redemption along. I just don't think it's going to necessarily come at the cost of his moral positioning, because John Cena's heel turn makes a sort of sense. Hey, I've been here all this time. Y'all been fickle. You've made me think things about myself. You praise me. You hate me. You know what? I'm just going to be who I want to be, right? But Cody has had full-throated embrace of who he is and his values and the way he does business. So for them to accomplish a logical turn for him between now and John Cena's exit, they would have to be much better at their nuanced writing than they have been lately, I think, to get us there. They probably could. I don't know if I personally want to see Cody go monster heel yet. It'll be awesome when it happens. I just want Superman to be Superman a little bit longer,
But
I
Chris,
think you.
to that
Yeah, go
comment,
ahead,
sorry,
Jason.
Brandon and Chris, like you said, Greg wasn't as worried, but you are, Brandon. Is the toothpaste out of the tube now? Have we given the fans permission to boo Cody? And is it going to start something from there? Because once it's out,
Right.
it's out. And could
Right.
those boos get to him? Despite him trying to be a nice guy, it's just not working.
I had one more thought on that, if I could, Brandon, real quick. I think there's also like the environmental factor of it being hot in there, people being drunk, and it being after a long 2 days, and a pretty boring, like some struggle, some boring matches, moments, and sequences that sometimes people just want something to happen, right? And that frenziedness of let's boo for the bad guy to do something. I just couldn't tell if it was truly booing against Cody or just, as we've been debating, was it the moment, right? Were they caught up in it? Yeah, I just don't know.
It did seem to have less vitriol behind it than, say, it did when it was pelted at Roman Reigns. Like this was not Orlando the night after WrestleMania 33, where that crowd, I was in that crowd that night. I attended those shows, and it felt like they wanted Roman Reigns dead. Like it was a legitimate hatred of that guy. That was not, we're just having fun. That was, please leave. We hate your guts.
Right.
And this definitely did not feel anything like that. But it was a major adverse reaction. And I'm really, curious where it goes from here. I want, before we get off the topic entirely, I want to get both of your guys' thoughts on this, because this is something that I have felt during the build to WrestleMania very heavily. I felt pretty let down by the route that they chose to take with heel John Cena after that electric turn at Elimination Chamber. And Junaid is the one that brings this up in the chat. I'll put it on the screen here. He said John Cena's explanation for his heel turn makes little sense because he's been ignoring the last 10 years or so when the crowd has been so behind him. That's a disconnect for me. Where do you guys land on that? Because that is something that was bothering me. I thought that Cena had a really, really nuanced opportunity to say, hey, look, I realize that I am not the guy that I once was. I haven't won at WrestleMania in X number of years. I haven't won a match in this many years. They're cognizant of that, and they're not afraid of talking about it because Cole talked about it on commentary tonight. So if Cena comes out and says that and says, look, I'm the best ever. I want to prove it. I want to cement my legacy. And I felt the only way to do that was by partnering with the devil, who is The Rock. And instead, we got what to me felt like a very paint by numbers, boo-hoo, you guys booed me, you people. It was all you people. And it took 3 promos before Cena really even talked about Cody. And we had so few interactions between the two that it felt a little underbaked to me. So, Jason, I'll throw it to you first. Where did you land on that? And where, how do you make sense of how they got here to the match?
I see what you're saying, and I felt like they got 80% there. I've always thought what was lacking in Cena's promo, if he's going to talk it, I love the way he framed it as an abusive relationship, right? And the disconnect, like Junaid said, for me, is that over the past few years, the fans have been more cheering of John Cena. But if this is an abusive relationship, right, as Cena puts it, his explanation for sort of turning on the fans in his last year is that that's when you're at your most vulnerable. When everything is sunshine and roses, I knew that you would eventually, you've been cheering me these past 4 years, it seems, but I know you would eventually turn on me like you did before. And I'm going to strike you before you strike me, because this animosity has been building for a while, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. Like the psychology could be an abusive relationship. It's very up and down, but it's when everything seems to be going well, that's when you know something bad's going to happen. So it's almost like a fight or flight response. So Cena could have gone down that path as far as saying that's why he turned on the fans. He was going to do it before they had a chance to do it to him. The other point is regarding Cody. It took him a while to get there with it, but I always thought that the reason why Cena did turn on Cody is because he was annoyed at how well Cody had done as a champion, because Cena, and as the lead guy of the company, because Cena always believed no one else could take his spot. And because Cody had shown he could rise to the occasion and business is doing well, that secretly ate away at Cena, because Cena made the comment, and Cody referenced it, that title belt is going to get heavier day by day. But Cody proved it didn't for him. And that annoyed Cena. Cena was waiting for Cody to fall on his face, and he didn't. So that sort of jealousy and Cody not failing like Cena thought he would, that would eat away at Cena. So we could have had that flushed out a little bit more in relation to Cody and why he chose this particular time to turn on the fans, because at first thought it doesn't make sense to turn on them when they have never been more universally behind him. And the other thing is we didn't really see Cena interact with anyone else. Like, you know, we've seen it turn heel. People posted online, wouldn't it be great if he beat the crap out of R-Truth or something? You know, that would have been good. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, John? And Cena just snaps on people to further cement the heel turn. We didn't see many interactions with other people. So perhaps that would have helped it along too. So, like I said, I feel like they got 75 to 80% there. But maybe we're going to get more out of it now. Maybe leading up to WrestleMania was just all about Cena and Cody. And now that he is the champion, we're going to see more interactions with other people. I'm always going to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah, they were certainly hamstrung by the lack of availability for Cena. And it felt like they had what, like something like 13 weeks between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. It was the longest build to WrestleMania in company history, because the event happened so late in the month. And yet we got 3 appearances from Cena post Elimination Chamber. And it really felt like they were trying to cram, 6 to 8 weeks worth of story into 3 appearances. And that was detrimental. But I think, Jason, you raise a great point there, where there were opportunities for Cena to just interject little lines that would have explained away a lot of the inconsistencies that I felt and Junaid felt and some of the others in the chat felt, and they just failed to do it. Chris, where do you land on all of that?
On a practical level, the one way that we could prove that the fans never turned on John Cena was the size of his residual checks, right, from merchandising.
Yeah.
But I also get the point that he's making, that we can have complicated relationships with things that we love. And I think that would have been an interesting way to develop the story. Hey, I'm real. I've never really let you see the real me. I've never thought you wanted to see the real me, but here's who I am, right? Mm-hmm. That's an interesting way to talk about, I've been bottling this stuff up. So I'm with y'all. Especially for me, I mean, I wasn't watching wrestling when Cena came up. I just returned, within the last several years. And so I knew him as the movie star. So when I saw him come back and wrestle at WrestleMania 39, I mean, the crowd was huge, right? So you can't say that the crowd has turned on him. What I think they could have done in a really interesting way, but they didn't have time, was to explore a kind of growing jealousy with Cody, right? And this is what I think, finally tried to land on. Was, for me, it wasn't so much jealousy as hurt, right? That Cody stole his playbook and they loved him for it, but they hated him for it. The same stuff, right? They just didn't unpack it the way they should have. I think Triple H takes booking classes from the same place Stephen King took novel writing. They have these incredible first 2 acts, and then half the time they shit the bed, and the third act and the other half the time it's amazing, right? You just don't know which one you're going to get, and I guess that's a pretty good ratio. So
yeah. Cool. Jason, I want to throw to you to bring up anything else you want from the show here before we move on to our next callers and run down the card.
Go for it. So I'll just mention one quick other thing. Look, you guys can run down match by match. I thought, obviously the women's triple threat match was outstanding. You guys can talk about that.
Yeah.
It's just I just want to quickly mention night one is that one thing I've noticed about Triple H's booking is that whenever a babyface turns, whenever somebody turns heel, they make sure that they give them a real legitimate reason as to why they're turning heel. And it's something that on the surface you could be very sympathetic for, but then it's like they're turning heel on bigger stars. So you tend to cheer the biggest stars. So going back to night one, Paul Heyman is completely justified in turning on Roman Reigns and CM Punk for the way Seth Rollins laid things out. I can completely understand why Paul Heyman did that. But we're meant to cheer Roman Reigns and CM Punk because they're bigger stars that we like. So that's going to be interesting moving forward. And just quickly, going back to night one too, I don't mind the finish to Gunther and Jey Uso, with Gunther tapping out to Jey Uso, because the story I believe they can tell here is that it took Jey Uso channeling Gunther in order to defeat Gunther. Jey Uso wasn't able to defeat Gunther with the splashes or the spear. He had to resort to a move that Gunther uses. So Gunther's comeback to Jey Uso could be, you couldn't beat me being Jey Uso. You had to beat me being me, because you know being Jey Uso, you can't beat me. So that could be an out for Gunther. And Gunther still has a winning record against Jey Uso. So I know a lot of people were upset with Jey Uso making Gunther tap out, but I believe that that finish in a weird way kind of protected Gunther. And you can tell a story with that Jey Uso couldn't beat Gunther being Jey Uso. He had to resort to being Gunther. So that shows a bit of intelligence and, sort of flexibility on Jey Uso's part. But it also, I think, in a weird way, kind of protects Gunther. So that's just maybe an alternative theory that I can throw out there. But I'll let you guys run down the card. I know you've got a lot of other people online and it's late there. Thanks for having me on, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the show.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks
Always good to
much
talk
for.
to.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for joining us, Jason. Definitely glad to get your take, and always really happy to see you on these post shows. Good perspective there on night one, for sure. He does bring up a point I wanted to mention regarding Paul Levesque's booking strategy, and it's something I've seen raised a few times here coming into WrestleMania, and certainly pertinent now leaving WrestleMania. There's some Levesque gets some flack at times for what people consider predictable booking, and I understand that notion, but I also think that sometimes predictable booking just means that it's clearly the right thing to do,
Right.
and oftentimes I think that is what you get out of Levesque. And that's not to give him a pass on some other stuff. And there have been bumps in the road, particularly during WrestleMania season. But I do think that that by and large, his predictable booking is typically because he's just doing the right thing, the thing that makes sense logically. So, Chris, let's go ahead and here before we hop to more VIP callers. Just start to run down the card chronologically. I don't want to spend a ton of time match to match, only because we'll kind of let the callers dictate the pace of discussion. But I do want to hit the matches chronologically. So we'll start at the top of the show here. We had Ava Max performing the Star Spangled Banner to kick things off. We get the usual open for the show, a whole bunch of pyro. They sort of did things, a carbon copy of last night, so a wide shot of the stadium before Cole kind of sends it to the opening promo, and we get backstage warm-up shots for the three women about to compete for the Women's World Championship. So that's our opener. Io Sky defeating Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair in just under 15 minutes to retain the Women's World Championship. I thought that this was an excellent match, a great opener. You could certainly argue that it was one of, if not the matches of the weekend. I mean, I think if you asked me to pick my favorites, it would be a toss-up between this and the main event from last night's show. I thought that all three women looked excellent here. I have typically been pretty averse to the idea of triple threat matches for major world titles at WrestleMania, and I argued for this to be a one-on-one match, actually, between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair because of the star power those two possess.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a fitting WrestleMania main event. But I can't argue with the result, which was a really, really good triple threat match, and a lot of that had to do with the involvement of Io Sky. I thought that they played off of each other incredibly well. They told the story very succinctly that Io Sky was viewed as an afterthought in this match, that she was a third wheel, but she was out to prove that she belonged with Rhea and Bianca Belair. She gets the win here. We move on to presumably a continued story between she and Rhea Ripley over on Raw, while Bianca deals with the fallout of Naomi and Jade Cargill over on SmackDown. Chris, take it away. What'd you think of this one, and where do we go from here with these women?
So I thought it was the right call. I didn't think it was going to happen, though. I thought Bianca Belair was going to walk out with her streak alive and the heel turn, like a lot of people thought. I mean, they were telegraphing a lot of turns throughout the whole weekend. But that match, I mean, it started it off perfectly. It was hard hitting. It was crisp, right? There was that fluidity is a word that I go back to with this and that triple threat last night. And I think what I mean by that is it never felt like it was two people having a match while the other person just kind of laid up waiting for their spot. It really felt like three people having an honest fight with each other.
Yeah.
And so that obviously took a lot of forethought, and so I commend them for what they did. The physicality, some of the spots. I mean, Io Sky eating boots directly to the face from knees that were not bent by Rhea Ripley, right? They put themselves out there, and maybe it felt like a little bit like they were trying to prove something, right? They were the triple threat that followed last night, so how do they one up it? I love seeing Io Sky win. I thought it was interesting that she is the first Japanese performer to win at WrestleMania since 1998. Right? Yeah, so a long time. So awesome all around, for historical, contextual, and the in-ring work itself.
Yeah, that finishing sequence in particular, when Ripley hit that, it was Sky was looking for the Poison Rana on the in the corner, and Ripley kind of whips her whole body up over her head into basically like a wheelbarrow slam on the flat steel of the ring post, and it looked brutal, it sounded brutal, and that was the setup for the finish, because Rhea got pulled into the KOD from there, and Sky then repositioned herself for the moonsault that ended the match. So really, really creative finish. I just thought just worked incredibly well, and a really, really impressive way to start the show for sure. So we'll jump into the second match here and then bring on another caller. Shortly after Io celebrates, Cole tosses to a video package for Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. This is, of course, our one hardcore match of the weekend, a Sin City street fight. Damian Priest gets a special entrance. Not a lot of special entrances on this show, or last night for that matter. It's almost like they cut the budget back a little bit, which is a little surprising given the amount of advertisements they had
and their sponsorships and their ticket sales.
They exactly. Out. They definitely did. But Priest does get a special one. He gets played to the ring by the guitarist from Slayer, which I thought was a cool moment, and it made him look like a star. So yeah, good moment there. McIntyre wins this one just under 14 minutes. I thought this was really fun match, hard hitting. It accomplished what it needed to accomplish, and it felt sufficiently violent for the feud that these two have had. I wouldn't have minded if they had thrown in a couple more spots in there, just because this was the only match of the weekend that had a big stipulation like this. So for them to have gone a little bit harder with the quote unquote hardcore action, I would have been fine with that. But I thought they did enough to make this feel like it was worthwhile and befitting of the feud that they had without going terribly overboard. The table spot to the outside on Priest when he was going for old
Yeah, that's
school,
cool.
and McIntyre just shoves him to the outside. That was a great spot. And then the brutal looking Claymore that ended this thing
Oh, man.
was a great finish. I was hoping that they went with McIntyre here. It felt like he was in need of a win on a big stage, especially after getting punked by Priest at last year's WrestleMania and then losing the title match to him later in the summer. So I was glad that they went in that direction. Chris, where did you fall on the match and the result?
So I'm a huge Slayer fan. So I mean, I knew that was in the track, but when I saw the guitar, I'm like, oh, Kerry King, this match is going to be awesome. And then it was fine. There was no color, no blood, which I sort of assumed there might have been, given how much more we've been seeing of it on regular programming. To have none felt intentional, right? And weirdly so. I'm with you that I would have liked to have seen more weapons. Using the ring steps as part of a street fight just feels like a little bit like cheating, right? Like, is it really a street fight when a third of the weapons you're using started there?
And don't really cause a DQ in a regular match.
No, yeah. I guess the only difference is he took him in the ring, right? I have noticed, and I could be misreading this, that the times that WWE has used street fight recently, it has indicated an almost PG-13 level of violence as opposed to something like a hardcore match or like a Hell in a Cell. And so I don't know if I'm reading into that or not. I didn't get the sense it was meant to be a festival of brutality rather than just two big dudes beating on each other with some stuff. And there again is the problem. Is that really a WrestleMania match?
Mm-hmm.
The story is good, and I like that McIntyre won. But again, I don't know if that was a WrestleMania match.
It's a good point, too, that you raise about the street fight, because that is the moniker that they use for house show main events and have for many, many years. They're in wherever they are.
Yeah.
I've been to house shows here in my home state of Maine, and they'll just say, a Bangor street fight.
Yeah.
What is that? That's nothing.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't mean anything.
Lobster rolls, man.
Yeah. I mean, like, granted, they did more than they would on a house show. I mean, Damian Priest isn't going to fly off the top rope and go through two tables at a house show, but it did feel like they were holding back that third gear. And I thought that maybe it was because there was going to be some more violence in the main event. Especially given what we had seen at Elimination Chamber. And then that didn't come. So in hindsight, it felt like they could have done a little bit more here, for sure.
We could talk critically about wrestling, we could talk journalistically, or we can say what my 12-year-old son said when that match was over. He said, that match kind of sucked. No 12-year-old boy should be saying a Sin City street fight kind of sucked at WrestleMania, right? Like, that means you missed the boat somehow.
Yeah, I certainly liked it more than your son did, but but you can't discount that opinion, because that is part of the audience that they're after. And I think that if WWE were asked whose opinion they care about more, me, just an analyst for pwtorch, or your 12-year-old son, they would rather get the reaction from your 12-year-old son.
Yeah, they'd rather get his reaction than mine, because they know that I'm going to spend my money on him.
Yeah,
I might spend it on me, right? and I think for him, he's not like a hardcore bloodthirsty kind of kid, but he even recognized they called it a street fight, but it didn't feel that much bigger than what we saw on Raw, right? So if y'all are listening out there, my son is onto something.
It's funny, because for me, I feel like they're, in terms of violence and its presentation in mainstream pro wrestling in 2025, it feels like there is no company that satisfies exactly what I'm looking for.
Right.
And what I mean by that is WWE doesn't bring it out quite enough for my liking, and AEW treats it like every Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And I crave a happy medium, and I don't
Me
get
too.
it from anyone.
Yeah, I do too. I do not want to see hypodermic needles through cheeks. Like
No,
that's not my
no.
thing. But I want a street fight to have some blood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that just makes sense. And that's where it feels like sometimes the decision making is inconsistent to the point that we as viewers are noticing, but yet we still keep tuning in, right? In record
Yeah.
numbers. So
Yeah.
what does it say about the strengths that are at play in the rest of the product that we are willing to overlook these weird things, right? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're glutton for some punishment. Yeah.
You know, Wade Keller, editor of the Torch, uses this phrase a lot, but Paul Levesque is a lot better at crossing his T's and dotting his I's than Vince McMahon was. And I think that brought a lot of people back. And because of that, they're willing to overlook some of these inconsistencies and shortcomings. And I think that is something that, as wrestling fans, we've grown over time to just expect and accept ultimately.
Yeah. And I feel like this is my regular PSA, but I say it every time. I in no way know what it feels like to be a wrestling creative person. So I bet you if they gave me the pencil for WrestleMania, it would have been the worst one of all time. So, all credit to the creative minds. But I got some questions, right? Yeah.
Sure. All right, let's before we continue on the chronological card here, I'm going to bring another VIP caller on. Sean, I did see your message about letting Andy jump over you, so I'm going to bring Andy from Houston on. Andy, are you ready to talk to us? Andy from Houston?
Andy. I hope you're having a great night wherever you are.
All right, we'll save Andy for a little bit later. CJ, I know you're still on the line. We tried to bring you in a little bit earlier, but now that we're getting into the chronological stuff, it probably makes a little bit more sense to bring you on when we're about to get to the women's tag team title match, because I know what you're looking to talk about. So, Sean, that means you are up. Welcome.
Andy, I tried, man. I did. I tried my best. I know I would have still done it either way, but I tried my best. I really did. I promise you. I really did.
I gave him the jump, and he just wasn't there. Sean, it's good to have you. Sean, of course, is a regular person to join us here on these Wrestling Night in American post shows, and also has recently become a co-host of mine. So Sean often joins me for these post shows. Certainly enjoy his input, and glad to have you tonight, Sean.
Yeah, glad to be on, Chris. You're doing a phenomenal job, man. Good to have you on here, man.
Hey, thanks a lot, dude. I appreciate that. It's always nice to see you.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to talk about what Jason brought up real quick at the end when he talked about Gunther and Jay, and I'll make it quick because it was still night one, but I see what he's saying. I understand the point he's making. He makes a valid point. I just think Gunther, it made him look weak in the standpoint of he had that move on Jay, the choke on Jay for like 5 minutes, it felt like. And Jay fought every way, shape, and form. And he put the choke on Gunther for 2 seconds and he tapped. I'm like, I'm sorry. That makes you look weak to me. That makes you look very, very weak. And I'm a Gunther fan as big as anybody. I think he can recover from it because he's a great heel. I think he can do a lot of cool stuff. And I'm not like he's not dead. He's fine. He can be okay. But I just, I've said my piece on Jay. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he won the title. And they needed to go that route, and I'm glad they did. And I want to see where he can go from here. I hope the future's bright for him. I don't know how long he's going to hold that title, but I hope he holds it well while he does. But Gunther just should not have tapped in like 5 seconds. That just made him look very weak to me, and I can't forgive that one, Jason. I just can't. I don't know what you guys thought about that. If you talked about that last night, but that just really bothered me seeing that him tap out that quick. I was like, man, you're better than that, man. I'm sorry.
We did talk about it, and I I'm still. I thought, with 24 hours to kind of think on it, I'd have a stronger feeling one way or the other, and I just don't. Like I think that they can salvage it
Yeah.
if they tell the right story, but I I I I certainly reacted viscerally in the moment. I was like, "Oh, that's a decision." Like,
Mhm.
I I I can see where the dislike of that call comes from. I'm willing to let it play out and
Yeah,
see where it goes,
me as well.
largely because I did like the crux of the story they were trying to
Yes.
tell, which
Yes.
was Jay knew that it was a mismatch with Gunther, and
Mhm.
the way that he sought to give himself the best chance was to steal his offense. And so
Yes.
the
Right.
culmination of that wound up
That was
being the
cool.
sleeper.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
Chris, where'd you fall on that before we jump into other stuff with John?
Yeah, I thought it was it the match needed 5 more minutes for me, first off,
Mm.
to create um, enough wear down in Gunther's body, or
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
to create enough forward momentum for Jay so that him being able to secure that tap made sense. Because as it stands right now, it didn't. First off, a sleeper, is not a move that a submission specialist really would tap to. Because if you're going to be put to sleep, you're going to lose the match anyway. So to me, it didn't even make sense that Gunther would tap to a hold that doesn't require you to tap, right? It's not choking out. And I know that I'm sort of splitting hairs here, but if your whole thing is submission and sleeper hold, why would Gunther tap to that? It's not like it caused him any pain, right? In that sense. So I thought it was the wrong bit of Gunther's offense to be the killing blow. There needed to be something else, right? Um, Let him pull off the chop, power bomb, and lariat combo. That one makes more sense for a pinning combination, right? So I think they had him go out the wrong way, but I think the story was told the right way.
Mhm.
Jay had to
Yeah.
train up. I think they could have done something cool by sending him to the dungeon, right? Like it
Mhm.
had some cool videos,
Mhm.
vignettes. They didn't do that, but that was the right story, and I'm fine with the outcome. Um, but yeah, the tap, not for me.
Yeah.
Jason raises the point in the chat. Maybe Gunther didn't want the
Mm,
embarrassment of being put to sleep, and that he knew he
okay.
was done. I think that's
Yeah,
a point worth raising too.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I mean, I'm willing to let Jason made the good point of Gunther can explain it away, and that's what I hope he does that, because I think if he does that, they can move on. Now I'm
Mhm.
curious where they go with him, and that's going to be intriguing to what the next feud is, because that's where I'm like, ooh, that can be interesting. But going back to the show tonight, just going back to the Cena stuff really fast. Again, Greg made the point the match didn't have to be great. That's true. The match didn't have to be great, but it wasn't even good. It wasn't even passable. And Cody, I thought, could have made it that way, and I think he tried, but it just wasn't good. The STF. I mean, we've said it for a long time. It always looked bad when
It
Cena
was
did it.
bad.
It was awful,
A
man.
lot of
Good
light there.
God Almighty,
Yeah,
was that awful? And Cody selling it made it look even more awful.
yeah.
That Cody even tried to sell it. And I'm sorry, the Travis Scott thing. He walked out forever. My issue with it was, and Cody's gonna have to explain this, is he looked so stupid even fall. I know the thought is, yes, I'm a good guy, I can't do this. Cody, look what Cena's just done to you in the last month, and the way he's talked to you, the way he's treated you, the way he's kicked you in the nads multiple times and beaten you to a bloody pulp. And really, he barely even groveled, and you're sitting there acting like you cannot do anything to this guy. It made you look really bad. And the fans were kind of booing whatever before some of that stuff. But I'm a Cody fan more than anybody, and that made him look really bad, in my opinion. And that really hurt the finish even more for me. And the ref bumps aside and all that aside, that's WWE main event stuff. It can tell stories, but the story here was not good. And Cena just to win a 17th title, that's not for me. Like I said, the farewell tour was fine. The heel turn was even fine. But again, I wish they would have explained this a lot more. I don't think they explained it enough, other than the fans were iffy on him, and he went in on Cody, and the Cody stuff banter was back. It was very good. I think they could have done a lot more, and Travis Scott just didn't save it. It was too long and drawn out, and it looked bad all around. But my question is, where do they go? Do they just continue to tell the story with Cena and Cody? Do we think Cody's ultimately going to win the title back, which I feel like just kind of defeats the purpose of all this, just for him to win the title back? Or do you think they're going to somebody like we've talked about, a Cena Punk in the future? Do we think this year that Punk ultimately goes and maybe he's the one that wins the title from Cena, and they have stories with other Cody and other people like a Randy, or do they go with some other stories here in the future with Cody? So where do you think they're going there?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of path that we're on now with Cody. It's sort of strange we're in uncharted territory with Cody in WWE right now, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
when Cody arrived, he was basically immediately on a crash course to become WWE champion. And
Mhm.
it takes him 2 years to eventually capture the belt from Roman Reigns. He finally unseats Reigns, and then he has this year-long reign as we get to know him as world champion. And suddenly now he's not champion anymore. And for the first time, he's not chasing that first title. He's not trying to get that monkey off his back. Suddenly he is, on his own. And so now it becomes a question of, what does he do? Are we talking an immediate continuation of the story with John Cena? Or are we talking about Cody pivoting to something else for a couple months, a few months, until they revisit Cody and Cena, maybe come SummerSlam? But Sean, I think you raise a good point. I think that they want to get as many dream matches and dream rematches with Cena in as they can before he retires. And so I don't think they're gonna want to spend all summer revisiting the Cody story. I think that they're gonna want to get Cena in the ring with other people. So that's interesting. Chris, can you think of any logical opponents that can serve as a distraction for Cody, similarly to the way that Brock Lesnar did after the first match with Roman?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm drawing a blank right now. My mind immediately goes to something like CM Punk, who still seems to be stuck in the trifecta. Even though there have been shots back and forth. I mean, it's got to be somebody big for it to not feel like a downgrade. It has to be. It can't be an upper mid Carter, right? It has to be top guy, right? So I'm just not coming up with a name right now. I need some more.
It's tough,
Bull, but yeah.
I mean, there isn't a Brock Lesnar. There isn't a guy that just makes sense. There's Seth Rollins. If he doesn't immediately pivot to a feud with Jey Uso for the world title, I mean, that was brought up throughout the chat last night, that now that Seth is a heel, it seems like he's the guy who probably takes the title from Jey. Do they revisit that with Cody? I mean, they went down, they did 3 matches. They had the epic Hell in a Cell. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. And it also isn't, I don't think it's not a fresh matchup, because we're back to the original designation. I mean, you have Cody Rhodes as a babyface, Seth Rollins as a heel. So there isn't anything fresh there.
Right.
So that's sort of, I'm a little wishy-washy on that. I
How
have an
Cody
easier
Gunther?
time. Yeah, it could. Yeah, Gunther makes sense. That's definitely a possibility.
Why did they have that match at the Saudi Arabia show? Why did they have to have that match? I just don't understand. They could have been a fresh feud, and they just went to it for a title versus title match at a place where nobody wants to see anything at. And I mean, it's just, oh man, I just don't know.
So
I mean,
don't
forget about it.
Could the story be Gunther's crisis of confidence began with that loss, and he's coming for revenge. But does that make him less of an interesting character if it's revenge motivated rather than calculation? Right. Yeah.
Derek Mitchell mentioning isn't Cody on SmackDown. He is, but they've been playing pretty fast and loose with that lately. I know it's because it's WrestleMania season, but we also assume that the draft is coming too. So they're going to be able to move guys around to sort of fit whatever they've got planned for the summer. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, it's a lot easier to think of guys lined up for Cena
Another one
than it is
for Cody.
For Cody.
For Cody is Drew. Drew could be a big one. That could be
yeah.
a big one.
Yeah.
I thought about that
They
the
can
other
do
day.
that.
I was like, that could be awesome because
And they've teased it.
Yeah.
And Sean, that's a good call out, because Drew can immediately pivot now that he's done with Priest, saying, Cody, I told you that
All that
you couldn't trust Roman, you couldn't trust Cena, you couldn't trust anybody.
Right.
I told you, and you fell for it anyway. You idiot.
He is an idiot.
They
I
can,
like it.
They can get into that pretty easily.
Yeah, so
for sure.
I think that's what Cody's. I'm really, because I think Cody eventually is going to be a good heel, a great heel. I just don't know if now's the time. But he's made himself look like such an idiot and such a dope. The way he's falling for the stuff he's falling for, it's like the fans are gonna, if they keep portraying him like that, or he's portraying himself like that, whatever. If he's cool with how they're doing the story, the fans are definitely going to keep booing him pretty quick, because they're like, we're not going to buy this stuff. We're not going to believe you if you're investing in this story, if you're just going to be made to look like that and grovel at this guy's feet, who just in this point in the story hates you right now. Like, come on, it's crazy.
I want to throw out something that kind of struck me in the moment while it was happening, and I don't necessarily like believe this to be true, but Sean, what you're saying about what you mentioned at the start of the conversation about Cody looking like a fool for not using the title on Cena in the waning moments of the match. I started thinking about it and thinking about the crowd reaction and how they were, so solidly behind Cena and booing Cody. And it got me wondering, Cody Rhodes has been presented all along more akin to babyface John Cena, leader of the company, than anti-hero Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? Like, Cody's his own guy for sure, but he's closer to Cena than he is Stone Cold.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we all agree. So we'd all agree on that. So are we pivoting back to this era where the fans are looking for their top babyface to have some level of edge, and the reason that they were siding with Cena is because for the first time in his career, he has that edge? And so I'm of two minds of this. One, I think that WWE's perspective on this is, we're not going to let Cody clock John Cena in the head with the championship, because that's a heel move. The heel would do that. And if we're already teetering on the edge with fans, kind of turning this weekend, we don't want to push them further off that cliff. But is that actually what the crowd is looking for in their top babyface? I don't know. Like, I it's just something that came to mind as I was watching it play out in real time. I think Chris and Greg did a good enough job with their arguments to convince me that Cody is probably going to be okay as a babyface. But just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, like, you're a face, and yes, you don't want to cheat to win a title and to keep a title. Like, we understand that, but desperate times come from desperate measures. Like, everybody's doing everything they can to underhandedly beat you. Sometimes you have to do what you can to keep your title, and you can explain it later. You can say, I didn't want to do it that way, but I had to. Like, this guy's underhandedly trying to do all this stuff to me, and I've got to. In this instance, I had to do it. It's not like I'm not going to do this going forward, but when you have to sometimes. And I mean, I don't like that for a face generally. Yeah, of course you want the face to win the right way, but when everybody's coming out, there's like 5 people against 1. Sometimes you
Mhm.
gotta come out and you can't just, oh, I'm just gonna do the right thing. So sometimes you can't.
Yeah, Jason kind of following up there, not clocking Cena in the head there. He lost the match, and Cole said Flair didn't get to 16 titles without being dirty. So it is. I think Jason is on to something with his argument that Cole was telling us some things tonight without outwardly saying them that give us a few clues as to where they might be headed. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah.
So for me, the reason Cody looked foolish, idiot may be too strong a word for me right now, but you know what? Maybe was not that he didn't hit Cena with the title, it's that he didn't hit him at all. He could have dropped the title and kicked him in the face. That's not a heel move.
Right.
He could
That's
have
fair.
dropped the title and tackled him and ground and pounded him, right? But it's
Yep.
that he wasted so much time laboring over the decision to hit him, right? Well, that's what made him look stupid.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to sacrifice your morals to win. Just be better, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that could be the story of being better, but yeah, I don't think they were thinking through the consequences of that sequence. The drama made it look awesome, and you've got your hero, lamenting over their moral sacrifice. But dude, he just looked like a dumbass.
And it was too over the top. It was too over
Yeah.
the top. It was
Yeah.
just like, okay. And one thing Cole said, because I've been getting, and Brandon, you know this, I've been getting on Tony Schiavone a lot for this on AEW television. Michael Cole, Chris and Brandon, Michael Cole had the audacity to say how great of a match that was.
Yeah.
That was not if you're talking about a great match, I'm telling you, that will never be in the conversation ever. No, and it's not as bad as, Miz Cena, it's up there with all those. But to say that was a great match and that was amazing and that was all that, I'm sorry, dude. What planet are you living on? Where are you watching? Because that was not great in any way. And I mean, it was just over the top crazy. And I like Michael Cole, but gosh, man, like, stop. That was not a great match. It wasn't.
Yeah, I mean he's wrapped up in the moment for sure, and he's got to drink the Kool-Aid and then serve it
Right.
to the people watching
Yeah.
for sure. But I mean, Sean, I'm definitely with you with Tony. I mean, Tony is so over the top at times in calling like every other match the greatest thing he's ever seen. But yeah, I mean Cole's gonna do what he's gonna do. He's gonna shill. Like that's who he is. That's kind of who he has to be.
Yeah. And then the last thing I did want to say about the women's match, it was fantastic. But I'm not going to argue that triple threat. I mean, yes, it was a great triple threat match. It was great. The story in the match was very, very good. I still would rather have one-on-one matches. I'm not going to say, well, because this triple threat match was good. I'm not. I want them now. No, I don't.
Yeah.
If you can tell a good story with a one-on-one match, the build to this match was terrible. You can say whatever you want. The build was terrible. And just because the match was great doesn't alleviate all of that other stuff that went into that. Rhea has still some overcoming to do because she has been really hurt in this feud. It has really looked bad. Going into the match where she had the vignette on Monday saying Bianca played with my emotions. Like, no, she didn't. She just came out and I mean, it's like it makes you look bad. The match was great. I'm with you on Io. I'm glad Io won because that was the story of this match, and she needed to win this because if she didn't win this match, I don't. And one thing, why do they keep saying she's with Damage Control? That's been dead forever. Like, why are we still saying she's with? She can let her be her own person. I don't get why they keep putting Damage Control in it. I mean, are they? Do you think they're going back to that somehow, or do they just keep saying it for some weird reason?
I don't know if they have officially decided that they're no longer together, or if just there's been so many like injuries and times where one or more aren't on TV that they're just not sure right now. So yeah, that's the only thing I can make of that. Chris, where do you fall there?
That's my take. I mean, Dakota Kai and Kairi Sane out on injury. So, maybe you just don't want to bust up the stable while everyone else is out. That's like kicking somebody down while they're hurt, I imagine it's not going to last very long when all come
Yeah.
back. Kairi Sane has to have something more interesting than just rinse and repeat,
Yeah, and what Jason's saying, I mean, I'm with Jason. I mean, Rhea's a star. I agree with that. Rhea's a star. I just want to have better storytelling with my stars. I don't want her just to be a star and just she has great matches. I want good storytelling. And with Rhea in this match going into it was not good storytelling. It just wasn't. And that's what I love about WWE for the most part is they tell good stories to make me invest in great matches. With Rollins and Punk and Roman, there were a little things here or there that you don't maybe enjoyed, but there was a good interweaving of why these guys all had an issue with each other, where Heyman's loyalty was going to lie. There was so much into that I invested in the story they told in the match, even though the match was still a little drawn out, but the story made a lot of sense in between each guy. And that's what I want if you're going to have a triple threat match, at least weave in why all these three people don't like each other and not just make reasons by, oh, she's cheering on somebody for a match and I didn't like it. And you're playing with my emotions. So I wanted to say one quick thing. And I know CJ will talk about this with Bailey. I won't talk about the Bailey. I want to talk about the Becky aspect. And here, I love Bailey too.
Sean, I'll let you do that. But before I just want to get in a couple of comments from the chat here before we move on from that. Adam Kidd just noting 2 of them are out injured. So just to confirm kind of what I was alluding to, they didn't actually ever break them up. They just have people out on injury. And I wanted to throw this question out to both of you. Ryan Solorio in the chat asking, do you think the boos are going to follow Bianca Belair? We've talked a lot about Rhea Ripley and Io Sky in this match, but not about Belair, which is surprising because I thought she had a great night too. Chris, I'll throw to you first. Where do you fall here? Bianca, do they turn her? Do they keep her babyface?
I think the turn still has to come. I mean, this loss has to be something that pushes her, if not over the edge, closer to it. They've been teasing it. I think the boos that I've heard for Bianca are the right kind of boos, right? And so I think they are going to continue because I think her character is going to shift.
Yeah, I agree. I'm full. She has to turn heel. I think the face run was very good for a while. I think it's gotten stale. I think she needs this edge to her in a negative way, like as far as the booking, like in a heel way. I just think she would be so good as a heel, and I think that's going in with Jade and Naomi. I think that's just kind of fitting into that. So I'd be all for it.
I mean, couldn't you see it? Oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead, Bruce.
A cool power couple between Bianca and Montez. Like that's some cool visual stuff right there,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they have a ton of charisma together. I mean, and Bianca's got a ton of charisma on her own, and I think that there is as good as a babyface as I think Belair is. I think she can also be a really great heel, especially at this stage of her career where she's got several years under her belt working babyface. I think she can be trusted with the intricacies at this point. She's been around long enough to kind of know how to get under fans' skin and kind of work those aspects of her character to her advantage. So yeah, she would also be an excellent heel opponent for a babyface Jade Cargill. And somebody that can carry Cargill to a longer match, which is I think what they want out of Cargill long term. They need if Cargill is going to be a major player at a main event level in the WWE women's division, she has to be able to work a 15 to 20-minute match. And Belair is a really good person to get some of those under her belt. Sean, go ahead with your comment about the Becky Lynch return.
Yeah, so I was definitely excited about Becky coming back. I still wasn't expecting it. I know they were talking about it on social media, but I was like, I don't know if this is the spot for her to be in. I know her and Lyra are from the same, area of the world, but I didn't know that that's where she was going to come in. But I thought it was cool. I enjoyed it. I mean, I like what Liv and Raquel have done, even though the women's tag team titles haven't felt very important. I've liked what they've done with them. I like that they've held them. So it was surprising that Becky, Lyra, even though Becky was there, I still thought Lyra might take a pin just because she didn't really need tag titles. She's already the women's IC champ. I was like, well, they can just have a good match and then Lyra gets pinned, and but they had Becky get the win, and that was fine. But do you think that? Where do you think they're going to go with Becky? Because I'm excited Becky's back. I think there's a lot they can still do with her. I mean, she's the man for a reason. She's still one of the best characters, women's characters there's been. Like, where do you think they might go? And do you think that when Bailey storyline comes back, she'll just give her let her have that because they made the team, and she'll give Bailey the tag titles, and she'll move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last night quite a bit on the show when CJ called in, and Greg and I had him join the panel for a bit. We both made the argument, and I think it's still where I fall coming out of tonight, that stipulating to the fact that what they pulled with Bailey is a bummer. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
It sucks for Bailey, and it's unfortunate. But if this leads to Bailey turning heel because she feels wronged by Becky stealing her spotlight, whomever it is revealed to be that has attacked Bailey, you can slot anybody in that position. If Bailey comes out of this as a heel and winds up in a major program with Becky Lynch that instantly gets boosted to the top of the card, which I think it does because Becky Lynch is at the top of the card, then Bailey comes out better for it. Because right now, if Bailey is just in this match as a babyface, maybe she and Lyra win the tag team titles, maybe they don't. But regardless, the result is Bailey shows up on Raw tomorrow or SmackDown on Friday as the same Bailey in a tag team, maybe with Lyra, with the tag team titles that don't really mean a whole lot, or they don't win, and she does what? Feuds with Lyra over the Intercontinental title for a month or two? This way, if it is a heel turn, coming down the pipeline, we know that Bailey's effective as a heel. She's done it before, and she's been really, really good at it. And she gets a huge money feud with Becky Lynch. So I think there is a scenario where Bailey comes out better off from this. But that stipulates to the notion, again, that it sucks for her. I mean, it sucks to miss WrestleMania. It seems, based on the reporting that was done, that she was aware that this was the plan for several weeks, so it wasn't just sprouted on her.
Right.
She likely had already mourned the idea of missing the show long before we ever even knew it was a possibility. So at least there's that. But Chris, what did you think of this whole situation, removing Bailey from the match, and where she ends up, and if she intertwines with Becky in any way?
I've got to think that this one hurt, like on a personal level, right? And so mourning the loss of it feels probably appropriate. She seems truly to be sort of the fourth wheel of the Four Horsemen, right? Or the fifth wheel of the Four Horsemen, right? But I agree with you that if she comes back and feuds with Becky Lynch, that makes it make sense. That in effect would also reward her behind the scenes for probably playing along, right? Not that she could really say no, but you know what I mean. Is there any possibility that they do something like have Becky Lynch be the one who hurt her, which would feel too similar to the Naomi, Bianca, Jade thing?
I don't know if I love her.
But who else would it be?
It could be Roxanne. They could play that back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Roxanne. The several people in the chat brought that up, and that feels like the most logical situation, especially given that Roxanne was left off the main card at Takeover or Stand and Deliver, would seem to indicate that she is en route to the main roster permanently. So
yeah, and I didn't like because I didn't like Roxanne just being on SmackDown just to lose to Tiffany. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, build Roxanne up, make her special, make her feel important. And they just have not done that. But I'll get off, guys. I'll let Andy and CJ get on. I know they got a lot they want to bring up. And but no, Chris and Brandon, it's always fun talking to you. And hopefully I'll be on again soon, maybe even tomorrow night. Raw's after Mania is always fun. So I'm curious what's going to happen tomorrow night.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it, Sean. Always glad to have you. And thanks so much.
All right. See you guys.
See you, brother.
Yeah. All right, so Chris, we've still got a few matches here to
Yeah.
run down chronologically. We'll keep going here before we bring another caller on as we get later into the night. Third match on this show was the Fatal 4-Way for the Intercontinental Championship match. Braun Breaker defending his title against Penta, Dominic Mysterio, and Finn Balor. Not a terribly surprising result here. I think a lot of people kind of pegged this as a dark horse possibility, but Dominic Mysterio in just about 10 and a half minutes winning the Intercontinental Championship by pinning his Judgment Day brethren Finn Balor after a fast and furious 10 and a half minutes of action. I thought that Braun got in all the right spots here, looked like $1 million, as he often does. I thought that Penta shined, looked good, got a really good reaction coming out first. I thought that was you can tell a lot about how WWE feels about guys by the way that they present their entrances and the way that they strategically place them in matches. And I thought that having Penta come out first was a sign that they see something in him and recognize that there is an organic connection happening with him in the crowd in real time, because the first person out always enjoys kind of a good reaction, and it can set the tone for everyone else in the match if that first person out just comes out to crickets. So it said something to me that they were confident enough in Penta to send him out there first, being relatively new to the company. So I thought everybody had their moments to shine here, but the real story was the unbelievable, overwhelming support for Dominic Mysterio that was so loud that even Michael Cole, who is usually adamant about trashing Mysterio until his heart is content, could not ignore the reaction here. So, Chris, I'll throw to you. What did you think of the match? What did you think of the result? And where does Dom go from here?
So I don't know where he goes from here other than keeps climbing. I mean, to go from getting the loudest boos in history, right, to having these cheers of pure joy, it's got to be, on a personal level, feel really, really validating for him.
Right? You could tell when he ran back to the ring too. Yeah.
And that, I loved that moment where he didn't care who was left there. Like, he was going to take this moment. And I think it says something about how we perceive the work he puts in, the dedication he gives to his craft, the way he puts people over and sells for them. Like there's something awesome about him. So you can't help but be excited that Rey Mysterio's son did this, and did it in a way that is his own way too. I thought that was awesome. I thought, with storytelling wise, it allows the Judgment Day to have some semblance of life again, because it was near death in my mind, right? And it may still be there. So I'm looking forward to what comes from that. But I'm pumped for Dom. I thought his mask was awesome.
I did like that the one moment that the announcers were really able to really get into their typical Dom hatred was when he struggled to take the mask off.
That's right.
On the way to the ring. I think that the cool thing with Dominic that he has been aware of this whole time, and WWE has been aware of this whole time, is that Dom had tremendous heat, but it was never go away heat.
Yeah.
It was we see you for the character that you're playing, and we're going to play along because you're so damn good at it.
Yeah.
And eventually that turned into, you're so damn good at it that we can't help but to cheer you at this point. So I think that coming out of this, it feels to me like the obvious direction for the next couple of months is going to be Dominic versus Finn Balor, which could be a lot of fun. I initially, when we started to think about, okay, Judgment Day is clearly reaching their breaking point. It felt to me like the clear direction was that Finn Balor breaks off as the babyface after being turned on by Dom and Carlito and Liv and Raquel. But coming out of tonight, it seems destined that Dom and company are more likely to be the babyface.
Yeah, how could you not, you know, okay, if Triple H may not listen to the internet crowds, he's got to listen to
Right.
that arena, that stadium tonight.
Right. And you don't want to be fighting that kind of uphill battle, especially
No.
on, you're on something that is definitely going to take up a lot of TV time, because Judgment Day have probably had more screen time than just about any act in the company over the course of the last couple of years. And I would anticipate that to continue because they're reliable, they're entertaining, and they just go out there and they do what they're asked to do. So I think that we're about to probably see a a realigning for Dominic, for Liv Morgan, because it doesn't feel like they're ready to break that pairing up. And I think that Liv has been really, really good in her heel role, has earned a lot of respect and admiration from the crowd. She's a character who got over on her own volition as a babyface without much backing from the company early on in her career. And so I think that if you slide them into a babyface role, they could take off pretty darn quickly. And I'm intrigued to see what he and Balor can do together. And if maybe Balor is, that's the thing. Balor seems due for a babyface run again too.
Yeah.
So how long do you keep that up before maybe Finn moves away from that angle and turns? I'm not sure.
So going back to the conversation with Sean a while ago about Cena and how you said, Cena tonight was that Austinish vein of, could that not be the Judgment Day, right? That you have an entire stable of your anti-heroes, right? And so they become the ones who maintain the moral ambiguity. But if they have to choose, they'll choose the right thing. Like if you could get them there, okay, that's fresh life into this stable. Yeah, it's cool storytelling. So I could totally see that. I hadn't thought about that before you said it tonight, but that'd be cool.
It almost, you kind of feel like they kind of have to go in that direction,
Yeah.
because if Dom is suddenly a babyface, his whole career has been presented under the pretense that his inexperience has made him particularly vulnerable in the ring against better suited wrestlers.
Yeah.
That was his shtick as a babyface, and that has been his shtick as a heel. I think it would be a stretch to just all of the sudden, because the crowd suddenly likes him, he's just that much better. He still is an underdog in terms of the way that he wrestles. And so, he can easily be an underdog as a babyface, but he's also got to win. So you can't get lucky over and over and over and over again. So I think, to your point, it could be a bit of an anti-hero situation where they continue to cheat, and the Eddie Guerrero, the lie, the cheat, the steal. I mean, they already do the three amigos, like it, and it ties in. I mean, it makes perfect sense given Dom's connection to Guerrero. So it definitely feels like that could be the direction they head in. Before we jump away from this match, I want to just touch on where you think Braun Breaker goes next, because it feels like the way they booked this match, this was not an indictment of Breaker, but a way to say, we're moving you up. We're moving you beyond the Intercontinental title. So what do you think is next for Braun?
Everything. Yeah. I was watching him in the match and I thought, if he stays healthy, he'll be able to write his own ticket, right? He's got everything, and so I think he's ready to be at the top, going for the gold. They could go back to the feud with Jey Uso, right? Run it back in the world heavyweight scene, shift him over completely. But I think he's got to go for a world title, and I think he has to get one sooner rather than later, right? That would be at least how I would make that happen. How you do that, I don't know. But
Yeah, the field is crowded. I mean,
yeah,
Jason throws out there Braun could align with Seth and Heyman. I mean, that's
I
a
mean,
possibility.
yeah,
We've seen there was some chatter last night, people thinking that if this Seth and Paul Heyman team is a long-term thing, that perhaps we could see some sort of stable. Um,
hmm
and I think that is a possibility. Andy from Houston, who we'll bring on here in a little bit, mentioning in chat as well that he thinks that Braun will be the next Money in the Bank winner, and that is
yeah,
certainly a strong possibility. We've got that coming down the pipeline here. Actually, I could mention they announced Money in the Bank officially on the show tonight as being at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles on June 7th. So they are doing another one of these like weekend takeover situations
hmm
with Money in the Bank, where they're pairing it with the Worlds Collide show that they announced last night
that's right.
that will involve AAA and NXT. So both of those shows taking place on the same day in LA. Worlds Collide will be in the afternoon, immediately followed by Money in the Bank, as separate arenas. The Worlds Collide event will be at the Kia Forum, and then the Money in the Bank PLE will be at the Intuit Dome, which will have a great atmosphere, as we saw from the Raw Netflix premiere.
Yeah.
That arena affords them some incredibly cool production tricks. So that will certainly be a lot of fun. Chris will jump now into the fourth match on this card. We had Randy Orton's Open Challenge. So this, of course, was supposed to be the Randy Orton Kevin Owens spot. I would imagine that they would have worked a pretty lengthy match. Although, with the way that this was formatted, it could have easily gone the opposite direction, where Orton
Right.
just punts KO to hell and that's it.
Right.
I really don't know what direction it would have taken, but regardless, neither here nor there, because KO unfortunately out due to injury. So Randy Orton comes to the ring. He cuts a very, very brief promo, just basically says this is his 20th WrestleMania, and he wants to beat somebody up and give somebody a WrestleMania moment. So last night on the night one post show with Greg Parks, we were talking with members in the chat, just trying to kind of spitball who could possibly be the mystery opponent for Randy Orton. And you know, Solo Sikoa was brought up because they certainly teased that the last couple of SmackDowns. We mentioned the possibility of somebody like Carmelo Hayes to just basically come out there and eat an RKO in seconds. And then of course there was some I threw out the name Rusev because he was rumored to have re-signed with the company and be returning imminently. So that was a possibility. What we got instead was Joe Hendry. And in my report for pwtorch covering the show tonight, I said, we came up with all these different ideas, and some were good, some were bad. There was a sliding scale, but in the range of possible outcomes, this to me felt like the absolute best one. And the reason I say that is because if you weren't going to have a feel-good moment with Orton getting his win and comeuppance over Kevin Owens, over their blood feud, and you were going to go the route of having a surprise opponent for Randy Orton at WrestleMania, you had to accomplish two things. One, Randy Orton had to come out on top.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring somebody in, a surprise opponent, and have Orton lose, given the crowd reactions that he's been receiving, the way that they sort of ease themselves into this situation, and just the sympathy that people had for Orton for not getting this big match that was scheduled for WrestleMania. On a personal level, you felt for Randy Orton. So that was number one. But number two was, because this is WWE and because they have conditioned the audience to expect certain things when they set up a surprise appearance, it had to be somebody who was going to elicit a big response.
Yeah.
And so that limits you greatly, because your guy has to elicit a big response, but you can't care all that much when he gets beat
Right.
in 3 minutes by Randy Orton. And of all the people, Joe Hendry is one of the only guys that fits that bill. So, Chris, I'll throw to you. What did you think about Hendry being the opponent, and what did you think of the segment?
I didn't have any problem with it. I saw there was a lot of chatter online about being a burial, and I think maybe even Sean talked about that earlier. I don't know if I would say that. I'd say I do question constantly having TNA's champions lose to WWE and NXT. I understand why, but I don't like that per se. But their world champion was featured on WrestleMania, for God's sakes, in a match that was celebrating one of the most historic WrestleMania performers of all time. And he took two of his signature things, but then he had a moment where Randy Orton did build him up and say, "They're here for you," right? And that felt genuine. And so I agree with you. It was fun. It gave him something to do. Uh, could you imagine if Jeff Cobb had walked out there, as you know, from New Japan? Literally nobody would have known.
It wouldn't have gone. It wouldn't have gone well at all, because one, you would have had a large segment of the audience who didn't know who he was, and two, if you're signing Jeff Cobb to what I presume is a big money deal, because every free agent with a name is getting big money from one of the two major promotions, you can't feel like it's a worthwhile investment to throw him out there on night one to eat an RKO from Randy Orton and go home.
No way.
So to utilize somebody who has a great deal of popularity among the crowd that's going to be in attendance at WrestleMania, and who you don't have to worry about the fallout of the booking, because he's not your guy. You're not booking him on Raw. I think this was a questionable booking decision on the part of TNA.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, it's fantastic for them to get massive exposure on the biggest show of the year for their world champion. On the other hand, their world champion got punked out in 3 minutes on the biggest show of the year.
Absolutely.
But for WWE, it's the best case scenario.
Yeah. And it might still even be that, right? I mean, you could, all Joe Hendry has to do is say, look, even the greatest of all time have taken an RKO out of nowhere. You win some, you lose some. Okay. But I still think it says something about the perception that they probably don't want to admit, but they're just excited to have their stuff at WrestleMania, as I probably would be too, you know.
Yeah. I mean, TNA has found their role. They have slotted in at a particular level. I don't think there's any preconceived notion with them any longer that they are a challenger brand, anything but what they are. And I think they're just grateful for the exposure. And so I think that, you know, in the end, Hendry is probably fine. And you're right, Chris. He is the type of guy who can explain this away.
Yeah.
He can make this work on TNA TV. And for the people watching WWE every week, maybe they flip on TNA to check it out. Maybe they don't, but they saw a guy who got a pretty darn cool moment. And Orton beat him decisively and cleanly, but there was a jovial, it's all in good fun nature to what he did. Even the second RKO was like, as someone mentioned earlier, like with Randy Orton, if you are a babyface, it's like Steve Austin and the Stunner. An RKO is as good as a handshake at this point in Orton's career.
It felt it had an exhibition feel, which I think also protects Joe Hendry to that extent.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I love the TNA world title, the design, and I think it looks better than the than the WWE belt that Cena walked out with, if I'm being honest. It could use some tweaks, but so they featured their belt, their stuff, their wares, their logo out there. Yeah.
What do you think the odds are that Pat McAfee saying, well, he's got a title, I think that thing should be on the line, was a approved line?
There's no way it is, right? I felt like there were several of those tonight that felt like slight passive aggressions. And they were mostly from him. And you wonder, like, did he get a talking to or what? But yeah, he was in his bag tonight.
Yeah. And he can do what he wants.
I mean, it was 420, so
yeah,
in Vegas, so who knows? Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and bring Andy from Houston back on. We'll get his thoughts here before we wrap up with these last couple of matches. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry I slept on the previous
No
queue.
worries. We had Sean on standby, and he filled some time for us. You're good.
So I was I feel like I've queued up so many things in my head to talk about as the live cast has gone on. With Stone Cold, I wanted to mention something with Stone Cold that has always stuck with me, that he followed the policy of DTA, don't trust anybody. And that was kind of the cornerstone of his anti-hero persona, where he never let himself be put in a position of being made the fool. So people always got their comeuppance. Didn't matter if they were his boss, a female wrestler, a male wrestler, and everybody was fair game in his world of, like, if you cross him in any way, and he will always make sure that he keeps the upper hand. And the crowd loved him for it. Mm-hmm. And you could see that kind of rebellious, no reservations attitude with other people like CM Punk, who, a lot of people kind of, he's not a Stone Cold, but he's a generational talent that has had a consistency of character, in that he doesn't have those kind of moments of hesitation where he's going to get, kicked in the balls for the standing still for too long. And that's a major failing with a lot of babyface champions from the past 20 years, is, first with Vince and now, somewhat with Levesque, that the baby faces always have to be made fools out of, that, they're somehow inferior with their morals to the heels, and the fans just don't buy into it as a result. I didn't want to get too far into this, because I know there's plenty of other things to talk about with the WrestleMania here. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's a good point, and I mean, I know that we've harped a lot on this main event, but it's the biggest part of the show, and it's the situation that is going to really. It's going to write a lot of the stories for the next several months that WWE is going to tell at the main event level. So I'm glad that we're getting a variety of perspectives, and it's cool too for you to kind of tie in the anti-hero babyface, especially after, I had that kind of fleeting thought earlier about what if this is a return to crowds looking for a more anti-hero babyface. But I also think that the point that you raise about CM Punk is pertinent too. Punk is a guy who, upon his return, the audience has been really steadfast in their dedication to him. And I think a lot of that is stemming from how consistent the character is. Phil Brooks is often harped on the internet for being a hypocrite. And I think that is a criticism that is in many instances justified. But CM Punk, the character, is very consistent, morally consistent, and presentation-wise consistent. And I think that has done him wonders. Chris, take it away. Anything you want to add to that?
I think that adds some depth to that exchange between Cena and Cody. That he did look foolish, right? And maybe it wasn't just foolish and being stupid, but he was naive in that moment, right? And that's something that Stone Cold never was, Andy. So you brought that out perfectly. And I think, to your point, Brandon, it ties back into what you're saying. And so that may be just the prevailing sense that, okay, we're just ready to see Cody take on some layers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not asking for him to switch from being Superman to the worst version of Lex Luthor possible, right? Just show us something more. Let us see that you're real, right?
Yeah, Jason raises the point in the chat. Fans want to cheer for someone with a spine and be unapologetic about it. And he raises the point that people loved Cody standing up to The Rock last year. And I would add to that. People loved him standing up to The Rock in March at Elimination Chamber. I mean, the telling The Rock to go F himself was polarizing. But it was polarizing because people were just unsure about a babyface using that kind of language on a family friendly broadcast. But I think everyone largely agreed with the sentiment behind it, which was Cody having a spine, having a backbone, and standing up for what he believed in. Andy, go ahead. Anything else you want to add to that conversation, or anything else you want to talk about from the show?
Oh, I guess, since you threw Rock's name into the picture here, his absence, from, I guess, when he didn't get his way and Cody nixed the idea of turning heel and becoming his puppet, that he decided he just wasn't going to participate in any of this. I really wish I knew what the backstage politics were behind it, how much of it was Dwayne Johnson's choice to remove himself from the story, or how much was Paul Levesque's insistence that the focus stay on Cena and Cody. But he called himself Franchise Viagra for so many years with movies, and it seems like in the wrestling business now he's more like a franchise dysfunction of some sort, because it feels like he's been much more a detriment than a benefit from a booking perspective for WWE. He probably has a lot of connections and a lot of clout from on the business side of things because of all he's done with his production company and his relationship with Nick Khan and all of that. But I have yet to see anything that has shown him to be a help to setting up WrestleMania storylines or doing anything, because it doesn't look like he's giving to the business the way he always claimed he was doing, back in the day when he would return and say he doesn't do this for the money. But now it seems like he he does it for ego, and if his ego is not sated, then he'll just slink away and hide in his hole or something. But yeah, I don't know enough of what's going on in the background with him that maybe he's busy and has other schedules, and WWE isn't the priority he makes it appear to be when he actually shows on Raw and such.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that you're far off base, Andy. I mean, certainly none of us claim to know like the backstage politics with Dwayne Johnson, other than what has more or less been publicized. So anything else is, um, just speculation on our part, which is fine. But I think that The Rock's involvement in the product these last couple of years has in a lot of ways exposed some of his some of the hypocrisy that he is privy to, or that he is inclined to sort of perpetuate. I think that there is a sense of entitlement and a sense of knowing better than perhaps Paul Levesque and the other creative. And it does seem like every time The Rock wants to show up, he comes in and he breaks a lot of stuff. He leaves and asks Levesque to do the cleanup job. And it sometimes works better than others. Last year, I think that they did a really good job at putting the pieces back together after The Rock kind of created a mess of things. They had to explain some stuff away, and there were things that, as fans, if you wanted to be invested in the Cody Reigns Rock storyline, you had to overlook a certain number of things after that big, the big press conference and all the stuff that they did with the reveal of the family tree and changing the main event. This year, it felt to me like they had a harder time reconciling what he did. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he wasn't available to them at all to right those wrongs or take them in the direction that they ultimately felt like they needed to go. And two, because the other guy who was involved in his angle, John Cena, was hardly around. And when he wasn't speaking about The Rock at all. It was almost as if what The Rock orchestrated at Elimination Chamber didn't exist or wasn't important. And so what you got was a crowd that I think expected was going to settle in for a story about John Cena selling out to corporate Rock and becoming his puppet. And instead, we got John Cena is pissed off at the fans and at Cody Rhodes. And so there was some disconnect there, which is a word we've used a lot tonight to kind of describe what happened in the main event. Chris, where do you fall there? I mean, where do you fall about, particularly with how you feel The Rock's politicking or lack thereof affected this build?
It seems like it was a repeat of last year's, of somebody coming in who has the power to inject himself whenever he wants it, right?
Mhm.
And to know that he can do that and just leave entitles people to behave that way, right? And so here we have it, right? That he got away with it last year and was able to convince himself that he was what made last year awesome. Now, whether he believes that when the cameras are on or off, I don't know. This year, it feels to me like Cody is almost like the one who's going to suffer the most in the politicking between Dwayne and Levesque, if that's what's going on, right? That here's somebody who loves professional wrestling and loves the business and had a champion in Triple H Levesque who understood it, and then somebody else who doesn't quite get what he's doing, Like, I don't know if The Rock gets Cody's, his MO. I don't know. The way they're telling their story seems so strangely divergent. So it feels like ego. It feels like um, power. Uh, and it just feels disrespectful, right? To not just the creatives, but the fans too.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely some truth to that, and I think I think that a lot of opinions on Dwayne Johnson have soured over the last couple of years if you've been watching the WWE product closely. And I think that that's a justified response to what we've seen and what we can infer based on the way things have played out.
Yeah.
Andy, anything else that you want to talk about before we let you go?
Uh, yeah, well, I was going to say that I think that's one of the things that have people supporting CM Punk so much is that he has no fear of speaking truth to power in a sense. Like the promo he did where he basically called out The Rock on what he thought was just a phony persona and the being absent all the time.
Mhm.
Uh, so I was going to go into another thing about Cena and toxic relationships, but I guess since y'all are pressed for time, I'll just close out with uh, the observation that a what really the one thing that really bothered me outside of the constant advertising and celebrity callouts, which takes up it felt like an hour of runtime each night, is the traditionally in a title match the entrance should be the opponent first, the champion second, and yet the yesterday we had Tiffany Stratton coming out first, and Charlotte got the final entrant, which I just thought was kind of a slap in the face because you should have the champion come out last. And then with the triple threat today for the opener, Io Sky came out first, and she should have come out last. To emphasize the fact that she's champion. And I I just think that I thought that Triple H would have been more adherent to that tradition, being such a student of the old school uh, style of wrestling. So I just wanted to point that out. But that's it, and I'll kind of fade into the background here.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it, Andy. Chris and I will discuss that here as we remove you from the chat. But thanks so much for calling in. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, Chris, it is something that I picked up on with those two title matches. I wondered. I didn't bring it up on the post show last night because I wondered if there was a logistical reason for having Tiffany enter first because of the special additions to their respective entrances. So Tiffany had the three Barbie doll boxes. Two were LED screens, and she was in the third one in the center. And then Charlotte Flair entered in the back of a Rolls Royce. Right. So they had some stuff going on, and I can't think logistically off the top of my head what would have prevented them from flipping the order there, but perhaps there was a reason for that. Tonight with the triple threat, I'm not sure. I don't think that any of the women received anything special enough that it would have prevented them. I also wonder, we talked about, how important it is to have such a huge reaction out of the gate, and how the order in which they have wrestlers enter can often tell you something about what they think of them. I thought it was a little surprising that Rhea Ripley wasn't the first person out. because of
Absolutely.
her star power, and that would have made her first wrestler out of the curtain tonight, which would have, you know, garnered a huge reaction. So what did you think of that, and do you agree with Sean, with Andy from Houston, sorry, that it is important for the champion to enter last in these matches?
I think it does feel important, right? It feels elevated. But I also think playing around with it from time to time prevents us as viewers from falling into trusting in those conveniences to tell the story, right? Uh, Triple H tends to do that a lot, right? Plays into the convenience, holding up the belt. Okay, we saw Cody closing out SmackDown, holding the belt, standing tall. He lost, right? He's kept up some of those traditions, but with things like this, isn't as slavish. So I thought having Io come out and then having her win was a way of saying, yeah, everybody assumes the champion should come out last. It's Io. She's the afterthought, but she's the one who won. That may be reading too much into it, but I can see that creates some fun storytelling opportunities.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it also takes me back to like the way that they used to. I don't know if you ever picked up on this, but they used to telegraph elimination chamber entrances, like the order in which guys and girls came to the ring was the order in which they were released from the pods, even though it was supposed to be random. So they would telegraph that, and they did it for years. And it's just like in the last couple of years that they've started to mix it up a little bit, which I always just thought was so strange. But
like, how did y'all not miss that, or how did you not see
that
one, you know?
Yeah. All right, let's finish up here with the rest of this card. We have already talked about a little bit with the women's tag team title match, but very, very little discussion so far about the fifth match, which was Logan Paul versus AJ Styles. First thing I want to hit on here was Logan Paul's entrance. I mean, I like to knock Logan Paul for a lot of things because his wrestling ability is not one of them. I mean, unfortunately, as unlikable as this guy is as a human being, he is really freaking good.
God,
and so,
yeah.
And so, you know, I would like to be able to knock on him for something corny or stupid that he did during his entrance, but he had maybe the coolest damn entrance of the weekend, which was him. So after the promo, the promo package for this thing, they come back to Logan Paul backstage shooting himself on what looks like a selfie stick. So I'm thinking at first that he either has like a small WWE camera, like on a selfie stick, or he's just shooting on a cell phone because the quality wasn't great. But then he comes out onto the stage and he jaws a little bit with fans that are seated on the stage. And then suddenly that camera just takes off out of his hand and into the air. And it turns out that it's a drone that is going to come into play during the match itself. So not only did they do that, but they also had 9 different cameras set up to shoot Paul around the ring, and they did 9 miniature shots filling up the larger screen to show Paul's entrance, and it wound up being super, super cool. Paul didn't do anything spectacular. You know, it didn't appear that they spent any significant amount of money on giving him an elaborate entrance. They just used all the cameras in the building to shoot him from different angles, and it looked really, really cool. So we'll start there, and then the match itself, I thought was really good. You know, AJ Styles seemed motivated, which is not something we get a ton from AJ these days. He played off of Logan's heel shticks and heel antics really well. The crowd was invested. They really liked AJ Styles, and they really hated Logan Paul. My one knock on this match was the way that they got to the finish. And I'm about to bring up Karrion Kross here in a second. Compliments to Greg Parks. We now have this running joke about Karrion Kross, but my issue wasn't with them getting Kross involved, because as mediocre as I believe Kross is, Styles needs something to do coming out of this feud, and Karrion Kross appears to be it. My issue was them bringing back this Jeff guy. Now, I admit that I am not the audience for Logan Paul. I don't watch his show on Max. I don't follow him on social media. It's pretty clear. I think I've made it pretty clear that aside from his wrestling ability, I think the guy sucks.
Yep.
So I don't have any connection or real interest in Jeff, who doesn't bring anything to the table. He's not I Show Speed, for example, who is a bombastic YouTuber. I don't know much about the guy. I don't like the guy, but I get what he is. Jeff is just a guy. And he didn't feel necessary to tell the story they were trying to tell here, because one, Paul won the match clean anyway. Jeff never ended up getting involved. Two, they still could have executed the same situation by carrying cross-hopping the barrier, carrying the brass knuckles, trying to talk AJ into using them. AJ still throws them away, and you go into the same finish.
Right.
And to me, you get the same effect without introducing this tertiary character that just doesn't matter to the vast majority of your audience.
So first, props for use of the word tertiary, like game recognized game, Brandon. You're absolutely right. The same exact thing could have happened. The temptation. Jeff, you're right. He's not I Show Speed. He's not Kai Cenat. He's just somebody, which in this world of professional wrestling means you're a nobody. Mm-hmm. And why are nobodies on WrestleMania television, right?
Yeah.
And added nothing. That's where I think some of this has to be, or I assume, contractual partnership pieces, right? Brand synergy that sometimes works really well. And then since this was night one, we didn't get a chance to talk about Jim Cantori with the weatherman shtick last night. Was so bad, it almost, in my mind, derailed the intensity of Jade Cargill. Like it took a minute for the. So they tried stuff this year, and most of it didn't stick. And this was one of them. I mean, this person clearly has no performance training. Was taking cues from some poor camera person, probably saying, "Put the things up there." Yeah, it didn't work. But the match itself was better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, I mean, Paul continues to impress on big stages, and at some point, I don't know what the length of Paul's deal is with the company. I know that he said on multiple occasions that he's a WWE guy through and through. He is a wrestler now, but like he's not. Like yes, in the purest in the purest sense, he's a very good pro wrestler, but that's not his profession. It's something he does for fun on the side. And
that's right.
And so him saying that is insulting in the sense that, like, if you say that, then my expectation is you're going to be around all the time.
Yeah.
And if that's what you want to do, then cool. Like you're really good at it. But he's not. And so eventually you're going to run out of stories to tell with him. And I wonder what happens at that point. I mean, they're clearly matching him up with guys who they trust, who they know can get a really good match out of him. And he's shown that he can work with pretty much anybody, but what is the ceiling on this? Mm-hmm. Is he always a guy who is working the undercard at events of this level and then occasionally sniffs the main event in, say, Saudi Arabia, when we all know it's a throwaway, but to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's a big deal? Or is there a expectation that eventually he is a big-time main event level heel that is working title programs and maybe holding the world title? I mean, is that a reality that you can get behind?
On one level, yes, because he is really entertaining to watch, Right. I agree with you. The person that he is off WWE TV seems to be a morally dubious person at best, right?
Putting it very kindly.
Yeah. I'm in my nice phase right now. So, but then I like to watch him. He's compelling on the microphone. He exudes natural charisma, and he's easy to listen to in the right sense of what easy means. You don't have to listen deep to get what he's saying.
Mhm.
He can evoke emotion in you. But my biggest probably criticism is that there's very little character development available to him because it seems that the person he is in the ring is who he's made his brand outside the ring. So
Yep.
he can't suddenly become a kind, loving,
Right.
let me try to do the right thing. He can't have any shades of babyface in the ring because he's not. And so he is one note. And so he's an attraction, is where I think how he'd end up being.
Yeah, and he's not a guy who I don't think that he would have any aspirations or the company would have any aspirations to attempt to turn him into some anti-hero babyface because you can't.
Nah, he's
He
too
is not
hated.
a guy. Yeah, his reputation is public enough that you are not going to convince a pro wrestling audience that by demographic largely skews left and is somewhat socially conscious.
Yeah.
You're not going to convince that audience to get behind a Logan Paul. It's just
No.
it's not going to happen. So I think that there is a ceiling in terms of, you can keep hammering this for as long as the crowd continues to like to hate him.
Yeah.
At some point, is there a drop off there where it becomes indifference? I don't know. But it's interesting to, think about who else is out there for him at this point.
Yeah.
Is a match with Cody Rhodes on the table? Is a match with, hey, could I see John Cena ending his career in Boston against Logan Paul? Yeah. I mean, do I want
Yeah.
to?
Right.
No, but could I see it? Yeah. Like, that's the kind of thing where you want to guarantee that somebody gets the biggest babyface
That's right.
reaction on a show, put him against Logan Paul.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there were rumors of them working together at this Mania, I thought,
Yeah.
before all the heel stuff was breaking. So it
Yeah.
seems like there's something to the smoke there.
Yeah, Paul had a lot of connections going into WrestleMania season. I mean, he sort of had, run-ins with CM Punk.
Yeah.
That was thrown out there early on. There was I think there was a Braun Breaker tease at one point where it looked like maybe they go in that direction. They were casting a wide net for Paul. It looked like before it became clear that it was going to be AJ.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to our final match that we have to discuss in full here of the night. We've talked about this a little bit, particularly taking it from the Bailey angle, but Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez taking on Lyra Valkyria and a mystery partner. So for those unaware, or at least who didn't see it, Bailey was attacked rather unceremoniously on the WrestleMania pre-show on Saturday. It's a little odd, but that's when they decided to execute the angle. So Bailey is taken out of the match on the WrestleMania Saturday pre-show, and they announce almost right away that she is not going to make WrestleMania, that Lyra will have to find a new partner. So obviously the rumor mill begins at that point with all signs pointing to Becky Lynch. And that is, in fact, what we got. One of the worst kept secrets of the weekend for sure, but it didn't hurt the reaction by any stretch. It seemed like people thought it was going to be Becky, maybe even knew it was going to be Becky, and still had a tremendous pop when her music hit. I thought Michael Cole sold the moment really, really well. I thought that other members of commentary did a good job selling this too. Becky seemed really elated with the response and really, really excited to team with Lyra. I think that the connection that they built over on NXT when Becky had her run there last year was understated, but I think it was good, and it was good to bring up on the show tonight. They certainly made more sense as a team than Lyra and Bayley did. Unfortunate situation for Bayley notwithstanding. I thought the match was a match. Nothing to particularly write home about. They worked a very basic WWE style tag where Becky starts off the match but does very, very little. They just kind of whet the fans' appetite a little bit. And then Lyra gets in there and works the bulk of the match, getting cut off from her corner, heavily beat down by Raquel and Liv, leading finally to a big hot tag moment for Becky where the crowd pops big. And they work, the final few minutes with Becky in the ring. I thought it picked up quite a bit once Becky got in there, and they did a lot of, trade-offs. We had the usual referee has lost control and there's chaos everywhere. I think WWE tends to be a little bit better with this than, say, AEW, who I harp on a lot for just having absolutely no control during tag team matches. So I'm glad that the referee didn't allow it to devolve to that point. But yeah, pretty paint by numbers there from that point on. Becky hits a manhandle slam to capture the tag team titles, and she is back. One of the biggest women's stars that they have ever had in the women's division is at least back on the roster for now. So Chris, anything you want to talk about match-wise, and then your hopes or expectations for Becky Lynch and Lyra?
I have the same kind of sense. The match was fine. It was fun. It had a nice feel to it, as if that's a match category feel, but maybe I'll make it right. It felt good. It was passable. It was not a go get snacks break match, right? But it also felt like a vehicle for Becky's return, which is not, I think, what you want for a match like that, and especially to come at the expense of someone like Bayley, who has had a strange WrestleMania season. Mm-hmm. I'm not the biggest fan of Raquel Rodriguez. I think she lacks charisma. I think she has yet to figure out what ring gear works for her character.
Yeah. I think that she has also, and I don't know if this has anything to do with her choice in ring gear, but I know that when she was off TV for a while, she was struggling with a skin condition. And when she came back, they brought her back prematurely, and it was exacerbated again. And I just wonder if her choice in ring gear has anything to do with that. If she has certain limitations because of that condition. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I agree with the notion overall. I think that they have slotted her as largely a tag team wrestler because that is her ceiling. I don't think that she has shown the ability to rise to the occasion and deliver when they first called her up to the main roster, it was very clear that they were viewing her in the vein of a Rhea Ripley or a Charlotte Flair, a woman with a larger stature who could be physically impressive and have athletic, compelling matches. And she just can't get to that gear. Mm-hmm. I don't think she has that gear. So teaming her with Liv Morgan, someone who she has a history with, has camaraderie with, I think was the right move for her. But I think what we're seeing from her now is more or less her ceiling, especially when you consider the amount of talent that they have in the pipeline in NXT. Like I don't know if you caught Stand and Deliver on Saturday. I haven't watched. So I Black and Gold NXT is one of my favorite eras of wrestling ever. And once AEW launched and I started watching that for pwtorch coverage, and NXT transitioned to NXT 2.0, it just got to a point for me where like something had to get cut because there just isn't enough time in the week. And so NXT was the odd man out for me. So I do my best to try to keep up on what's going on there and to catch the takeover specials when I can. So I was watching Stand and Deliver this afternoon and was just kind of blown away that they were able to get 10 women on the main card.
Yeah.
And all of them feel like they might have a future on the main roster.
Yes.
I mean, at least 4, 5, 6 of them assuredly have a future on the main roster. So somebody like Raquel, it just doesn't feel like, it feels like she's reached her peak.
Yeah. Cut from an older cloth, right? Just doesn't work anymore, especially with the viewing habits of the current consumer base.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting too. We had a couple of comments in the chat regarding Lyra on the other side of this match, and I'm inclined to agree with Sean, who said that she's a very good wrestler with very little charisma, and I think that there might be some charisma there, but it's not showing up, at least not yet. And they're really trying with her. I mean, there was a distinguished effort to get that secondary title on her, make her, the inaugural champion, and get her in the ring because that's where she shines. I mean, she can give you. We talk about, a main event level woman in WWE needs to be able to provide that 15, 20-minute match. Lyra can do that, but she does seem to be lacking in some of the other areas. Do you think that, we've kind of seen the peak for Lyra as being sort of an anchor for the women's mid card, or can she take that next step?
I think she could take that next step. When she first got called up, I remember, I think what was her first Raw, she came up, in the smoke and had a smile on her face that was real. And I was thinking to myself, oh, the person behind Lyra Valkyria was overwhelmed with the feeling. But then it sort of was like, I was waiting for that to go away. And it feels like she's always just really happy to be here, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like that Joe Hendry sense of like, I'm always in awe of it. To me, the most alive that she has felt was that brief period where they had her with Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, where she felt like she was able to let out some of the more fun aspects of her personality that frankly that the Raven just doesn't. And so not that she needs to go that way, but I would like opportunities for us to see her break out of the caricature, which I think would be sink or swim,
Yeah. Cool. Chris, that was WrestleMania 41 Night 2. We did it. It took over 2 hours, but man, I want to kind of, before we totally wrap up, get some kind of like closing thoughts on the weekend as a whole, get a thumbs up, thumbs down. But first, just want to throw out a quick plug for VIP. If you happen to be listening afterward here on the audio only version, I just want to mention it's pwtorch.com/go VIP. Those that are watching on YouTube or elsewhere can certainly see the graphic I have on screen here. But it's a great time to go VIP just because WrestleMania season is over. Now we're getting into the real nitty gritty where we start to talk about what the slower season for WWE looks like, what they're going to do with the fallout of WrestleMania. Is there more stuff coming down the line with the likes of The Rock and Travis Scott? There's so much to discuss. And we only have scratched the surface here on this post show, and we're reacting virtually in real time, having no benefit of hindsight with the show just ending here when we went on the air. So VIP is a great way to get a ton of PW Torch content. It includes ad-free podcasts, VIP-only podcasts. You get 35 years worth of podcast and newsletter archives, the weekly PDF newsletter, tons and tons of back issues. It's a great way to take a look, if you want to know what wrestler A or wrestler B was doing 10 years ago and how that compares to where they're at now. You can look at Wade and other contributors and columnists' thoughts in real time as it happened back then. So that is really, really cool. You also, of course, get an ad-free version of pwtorch.com, and that gives you links to these live shows where you can join in and talk to us live on these post shows, as so many of our VIP members did tonight. And I certainly want to give them thanks for doing that, because it certainly made this show a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun to have you here, Chris.
Yeah.
I want to give you a chance to plug what you do for the Torch. But before that, real quick, just kind of overall final thoughts on this show. Where do you land? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
Thumbs 3/4 of the way. It's a 75.
3/4 of the way up.
For me. Yeah. The more we talked about, the more there's a lot more that I like than I dislike. Although the stuff that I dislike rather profoundly. So yeah. But I still, you know what? I had a blast though, and there was some really good wrestling. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah. I mean, last night, when we were doing this at the end of the show, I kind of said, for the people watching on YouTube and elsewhere, the visual representation was sort of going into the main event. I was like kind of here. I was bordering on a thumbs down, but there was enough to keep me in that thumbs in the middle. And then the main event was so good that I wound up here, where I was kind of like bordering on thumbs up, but still thumbs in the middle, because there was enough negative that I thought it knocked it down a peg. Tonight felt, as we kind of discussed at the top of the show, like the inverse. I started the night just like, cool, like this is a really good follow-up. Like I'm glad that for the first time, night 2 sort of really surpasses night 1 and firmly establishes itself as the better of the two. And then we got to the main event, and I sort of went, so
yeah.
I land overall for the weekend. I think I land on a mild thumbs up. I think that the undercard of tonight's show was enough to really, really anchor tonight's portion of the card. Last night's main event saved last night's portion of the card. But the lasting image is the last 5 minutes of the John Cena Cody Rhodes match. And to me, that was a bummer and a letdown. Even though I am very intrigued by the stories they can tell coming out of this, and I remain interested and invested in Cena's story and Cody's story.
Yeah.
So, I think that with hindsight, I might feel differently. But in the moment, I think that's probably where I land, is that sort of mild thumbs up range, which, there have been WrestleManias where I have just been like, why do I watch this crap? Why do this is the biggest show of the year, and I hated every second of it. And I don't want to feel that way. And I didn't at any point, tonight or last night. So that's good. Where I think that I think that what they had working against them this year was that the last 2 years were so strong.
Yeah.
And we were at the peak of, Paul Levesque's creative run. He was freshly in charge. The bloom was not off the rose. They had one of the hottest angles that they have ever had with the bloodline, and the ultimate culmination of that storyline and crowning Cody Rhodes. It was going to be really, really hard to hit those highs a third year in a row. And they didn't do it, but that's ultimately okay, because you can't do it every year.
Right. Yeah, you just can't. You can't stick everything perfectly. In the kind of work I do, I say to my friends, sometimes you aim for a masterpiece, and what you just get is something fine. But something fine is sometimes all you need, right? Um, so yeah, this was fine. Next
Was
year,
that a quote from you, or was it Dusty Rhodes?
oh, oh my God, no, I wasn't thinking about Dusty Rhodes. Oh my God, that's I really wasn't. That's funny. I guess then it must actually be true. Yeah. If it came from him. Yeah.
Uh, all right. Well, Chris, I want to give you an opportunity to plug what you do for the torch here before we
Yeah.
officially sign off.
Sure. Thanks. I write hits and misses for SmackDown. And I am about to launch with Kurt Cadet our own VIP show we're calling Catch the Culture, where we will be exploring contemporary wrestling events and pop culture, along with looking at historic matches and events from pop culture at the time. The idea is to explore how wrestling sometimes both is impacted by the culture and actually pushes it forward. So I think we're going to actually have a really fun time.
Cool. Sounds very, very cool. So that's another reason to go VIP, to check out that show. Certainly something I look forward to checking out myself. Chris, thanks again so much for
Yeah.
joining me. This was a lot of fun. Went long for sure, but it's WrestleMania. So,
Hey,
we had plenty of fodder to discuss from the chat and from our callers, and want to thank them, of course, for joining us as well. I, of course, can be found each month covering both WWE PLEs and AEW pay-per-views. I provide alt perspective reports for all of those shows for PW Torch, both on the free site and the VIP side. I also host these Wrestling Night in America shows following those pay-per-views and PLEs. I am also a frequent co-host with Wade Keller on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast. One programming note I want to mention: I will not be providing coverage for WWE Backlash. So I also will not be available to host this show. I've not spoken to Wade yet, so I can't say for certain that there won't be a show, but it won't be me hosting that show. So just stay tuned for, to PW Torch socials, and I'm sure an announcement will be made one way or another. But that happens to be my fiance's birthday.
cool.
So I cannot, I cannot in good conscience take the night off to cover wrestling. So it won't be me for Backlash, but perhaps someone else. Once again, thanks so much, Chris. Thanks to our
Yeah.
VIP
Thank
members.
you.
Had a lot of fun. That is a wrap on WrestleMania and a wrap on Wrestling Night in America. But once again, a reminder: if it is a WWE PLE or an AEW pay-per-view night, it is Wrestling Night in America.